Hi everyone, I'm gonna start in a few minutes, all right? Tell me who you are and where you from. Or you can just tell me who you are. I'm gonna start at 9:45, trying to get more people to come into the chat. All right, hi everyone. Please welcome to Crime and Justice with Brian P. How is everyone doing? Please give me a like and subscribe. Today we're going to watch a couple of videos. Right now we're going to watch the arrest of a third person in the that had to do with the murder of Savanah Soto and the murder of Matthew Guerra and the baby. This the reason this is why there is an arrest of a third suspect.
Mike, how far are you going? I'll tell y'all when they're coming. How far are you? Yeah, yeah. No, sir. He is way behind me. I'm in the front. And they're about to walk in a second. Looks like her name's going to be Myrta Romanos. Myrta is first name, Myrta. Myrta, Myrta Romanos, Romanos. Romanos? Myrta. Yeah, the first name is Myrta. Yeah, that's what I'm getting here. ROM. Yeah, ROMANOS. And it's the mother of the younger suspect. I'll say it. Can you text him that? I did. One, well, está conectado, está listo para presser.
They haven't shown the person yet.
Okay.
And it's already set up for the presser.
I might skip through to see who they arrested. Ain't too long.
Recordings just got better. Hey, it's Dana from StreamYard. I'm so excited to announce that local recordings are now available on StreamYard.
Mirta. Yeah, Mirta.
Mirta, as a mother, how did you be involved in this?
Mirta, did you give Christopher your gun?
Family? Do you have anything to say to this family?
Did you give Christopher your gun to use in this murder?
Why did you do it?
Are you sorry?
Excuse me, guys.
Nothing to say to the family.
Did you give Christopher your gun? How can you sleep at night? How have you been able to sleep at night?
Ciao, guys. Do you have anything to say to the family?
Did you give Christopher your gun? What is your silence supposed to say? What message is your silence sending? Are you sorry? Does your silence mean anything? What do you want people to know? What do you want to say to Savannah's mother, Matthew's mother?
Excuse me.
That is Mirta Romanos. San Antonio police just arrested her in connection to the murders of Savanah Soto and Matthew Guerra. Savanah was pregnant at the time of her murder, according to police. She was reported missing back on the Friday before Christmas, and police found her body and Matthew Guerra's body in a car on December 26th, the day after Christmas. Last week, San Antonio police made 2 arrests in this case, Christopher Preciado and his father. And now we have Mirta Romanos, who we're told is the mother of Christopher and married to the father of Christopher. So we are expecting to get an update from police as to why they think she's a suspect. But we know from the search warrant, some paperwork that we've gotten, that she told police that she was sleeping the night that this happened, and that she said it was her gun.
You guys ready? Okay. Ready? Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. We're going to provide you with an update on the Savanah Soto and Matthew Guerra case. First and foremost, once again, SAPD wants to extend our condolences to the family of Savanah and Matthew. Today, as you saw, we just made another arrest. This is the 3rd arrest in this case. Just to recap, back on December 23rd, Leon Valley PD reported that Savanah and Matthew Guerra were reported missing to their jurisdiction. On December 26th, SAPD officers received a call for a disturbance. When those officers made that location, they discovered the bodies of Savanah Soto and Matthew Guerra. They were found deceased in their vehicle, the Kia Optima, that had also been reported missing. Since then, our homicide unit has done an outstanding job in following this case. They followed every lead. They were able to get surveillance video, which led them to these arrests that were made. On January 3rd, we made 2 arrests, 19-year-old Christopher Preciado and 53-year-old Ramon Preciado. There was a lot of information on social media that there was a 3rd individual involved. Our homicide detectives were aware of that. However, we were looking for enough probable cause to make that arrest and to present the best case forward to the DA's office. Today, that happened. They were able to develop enough evidence to charge 47-year-old Myrta Romanos. That's Myrta Ramanos. She is believed to be, I'm not sure exactly what the relationship is, but maybe a stepmother to Christopher, 19-year-old Christopher. She is being charged with 3 felonies. The first one being alter, destroy, conceal a human corpse, which is a second-degree felony. She's also being charged with abuse of corpse, which is a state jail felony, and a third charge, tampering with evidence. Through our forensic unit, we were able to develop information from surveillance video that shows Miss Romanos involved the night of the murder. That video surveillance shows her at the home right after the murders, and she was seen on video surveillance leaving in that black truck that we all saw on the surveillance video, and then returning to her home with Christopher and Ramon in that truck. At this time, I'll take any questions that you might have.
It was her weapon, right?
Excuse me?
They matched her weapon to the ballistics.
Right. That tampering with evidence, from what we understand, she stated that was her gun. So we do know that that was her weapon.
And do they believe they were killed in that home? And what was the mother and the stepmom's role in allegedly?
I'm not sure exactly where. We haven't released any of that information. I'm not sure what the circumstances were, but we do know she was involved in helping get rid of the evidence concerning those bodies.
On the 3rd, you guys were under the impression that there were only 2 suspects, or had said that there were 2 suspects that were arrested?
No, our homicide detectives were aware early on in the investigation that there wasn't a 3rd person involved. We know that from the video surveillance when there is that towel that's everyone's talked about being thrown. At that time, we just didn't have enough evidence to say that that was Miss Myrta Romanos. But like I said, since then, they've developed enough evidence from surveillance video from the home showing her leaving with the 2 as she gets into that truck. And then when they return to the home, it's her, Christopher, and Ramon in that truck.
Had she called you guys in the past week to go to the house at all? Because I know there's been some report of vandalism there.
I'm not aware of any of that.
As of right now, are you under the impression there are any more suspects?
At this time, we're confident that there's no more suspects. At this time, we're confident that these were the 3 individuals that were involved in this case.
Do you believe this is connected somehow to a larger crime ring or anything like that?
No, we don't have any information to lead us to believe that. We do know that there was, I guess, a transaction earlier in that night. What happened and transpired was Matthew Guerra and Savanah were killed. I don't.
So you guys still don't know where they were killed? Like if it was at home or somewhere else?
We believe it was in that area, right near their home. How cooperative was she? I know there was a search warrant that was issued a few days ago. There was a search warrant, so they had the authority to go into that home. Today, I don't believe she said much.
The towel.
I don't have that information. Any other questions?
Did she confess today?
She wasn't cooperative today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
We believe she's a stepmom.
Okay,
Not, yeah,
She's
that's.
still married to Ramon, or
I don't know if that's a common law or they're living together, but I don't believe they're legally married. But I'm not for sure. She did live. Them 3 did live in the house together.
So now you guys are identifying as stepmother.
Correct.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you just heard from San Antonio Police on this arrest, the 3rd arrest in the murders of Savanah Soto and Matthew Guerra. They, of course, were found dead in a car on Danny K Drive back on December 26th. They were reported missing a few days before. Savanah, she was expected to give birth that Saturday, or to be induced, I should say, that Saturday, and family just hadn't heard from her. So they called Leon Valley Police and reported her missing, and of course, they found her missing, deceased in a car with Matthew Guerra, her boyfriend. And so we, like I said, we just heard from police. They just gave us some information. They said that they had executed a search warrant on the Preciado's home, which there are 2 suspects already arrested. We're talking about Christopher Preciado and Ramon Preciado, and they believe that Myrta is married to Ramon Preciado, the father, and then is the stepmother of Christopher Preciado, who is the one who's charged with capital murder in this case. He's the one who police believe did it. They believe that these two, the parents, helped with the murder. They helped clean it up, they say. Okay. Sorry, we were just getting some quick updates from police there on the case number. Now, we did get our hands on the arrest affidavit. And according to this arrest affidavit, I'm reading through it. Okay, we're getting sound in Spanish right now, so.
Asesinato de Savanah Soto y Matthew Guerra. Ya sabemos todo lo que pasó antes. Hoy los detectives tenían suficiente evidencia para hacer un arresto a la tercer sospechosa en que se trata de este caso.
That part makes me sad
Arrestamos
too.
a Mirta Romanos, de 47 años. Ella va a ser cargada con 3 cuentas de delitos mayores: alter, destroy, or conceal a human corpse, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. Todos son delitos mayores. En la noche, bueno, cuando nosotros, nuestros detectives obtenieron el surveillance, el video del surveillance que tenía la camioneta, cuando estaban tratando de esconder los cuerpos de las víctimas, todos sabíamos que había una tercera persona dentro de la troca que como tiró una toalla o algo. Siempre sabíamos esto. Teníamos la idea quién era la tercera persona, pero no teníamos suficiente evidencia para cargar a esa persona con los delitos.
Same thing they said in English. Basically, they didn't have evidence, and basically they had to collect evidence that the mother was involved, and it was the mother's gun.
Para cargar la madrastra, que creemos que es la madrastra de Christopher, esposa o common law novia de Ramón. ¿Tienen preguntas?
It's basically the mother's gun. She hid evidence, which is kind of messed
No
up. You know?
teníamos, ella, siempre sabíamos que era una persona. Pensábamos que era esta señora Romanos. Finalmente teníamos suficiente evidencia para cargarlo con eso. Parece que hoy fue cuando los detectives fueron a obtener el orden de arresto, y hoy fueron y la arrestaron sin incidente.
El arresto fue sin incidente.
Basically saying they got
Casa de
the order of arrest, and they
ella
arrested without
no
incident.
estaba cooperando con la investigación hoy, pero sí el arresto fue sin incidente, y cuando lo traemos aquí no habló con los detectives.
Ya había estado cooperando con ustedes. ¿Qué les dio a entender? ¿Qué evidencia les dio a entender que ella era la persona que estaba en ese video?
Finalmente teníamos evidencia de video que vimos a ella entrar a la camioneta con Ramón, o bueno, con una persona, con Ramón, en la noche que ocurrió los asesinatos, y cuando regresaron los 3, Ramón, Christopher y ella, salieron de la camioneta.
¿Nos puede decir un poquito de la arma?
So basically, he's saying that
Una de las cargas
both were assassinated.
que ella fue cargado hoy fue tampering with evidence, y era la pistola. La pistola, ella es la dueña de la pistola. Ella fue cuando fuimos a recogerlo o buscarlo.
She's the owner of the gun.
Ella escondida, y la unidad de forensics confirmó que esa pistola fue la pistola usada en el asesinato de los víctimas.
¿Alguna vez Christopher o Ramón dijeron algo acerca de ella?
¿Digamos?
¿Alguna vez Christopher o Ramón los involucrados al principio?
Ella no. Ellos nunca le involucraron a ella, y ella nunca se involucró ella misma. Fue evidencia que nuestros detectives obtenieron para poder hacer eso.
And they never ratted her out.
Bueno, estábamos seguros que no estábamos buscando a otro, porque los teníamos identificados. No podíamos hacer un arresto sin suficiente evidencia. Ya sabíamos quién era. Bueno, teníamos Sí, ya sabíamos quién era, pero ahora finalmente obtuvieron la suficiente evidencia para tener un arresto. Gracias. Thank you.
So basically, that's just it. The mother got arrested because they believe that she was part of the case, and basically she was involved and she hid
All
some
right, we
evidence.
just got another update from police, but this time in Spanish, to give an update to the Spanish stations. But we were able to ask them a couple more questions, specifically about the last time we were here. We were here about a week ago when they arrested the first two suspects, Christopher Preciado and Ramon Preciado, who are related to Mirta, the woman that just arrested, who you saw get perp walked to that police car just a few minutes ago. When that happened, they said that they were confident that there were no more people that they were looking for. And so I asked about that because obviously there's a third person arrested. And what I was told by San Antonio police is that they already knew that she was involved in this murder in some form or fashion. They just needed the evidence to be able to prove it and to charge her, which they said that they were able to do today. And they said that when they brought her in, she wasn't cooperating with them, didn't give them much. And another thing that we learned from that press conference in Spanish is that the two suspects that were already arrested, Christopher and Ramon, they did not give her up. They said that they did not even mention her. And so San Antonio police, through their own work, they said that they narrowed down this person, Mirta Romanos, and arrested her. And they said that, of course, it was her gun that Christopher is accused of using in this crime. And again, for those of you just joining us, a third arrest was made in the case involving Savanah Soto and Matthew Guerra, the two killed, found dead in a car on December 26th. Savanah was pregnant. She was expected to give birth any minute now. She was actually supposed to be induced the Saturday before her body was found, and her family had reported her missing because she didn't show up to the hospital. So we're going to wrap everything up for you right now, but of course, join us again tonight at 5 and 6 to hear more about this case.
So let's see, that was earlier today. That was the first thing they said about this case. So I'm gonna look at what they said at 5 and 6 o'clock earlier because I didn't see. This was about an hour ago. Let's see this.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical products. It's Amazon's other company.
All right, Joey, thanks. It's 5:02 right now, and we are following some breaking news from overnight. There has been a huge break in the case of the murders of soon-to-be parents Savanah Soto, her unborn baby Fabian, and the baby's father, Matthew Guerra.
San Antonio police arresting a teenager and his father in connection with those crimes. News 4's Christina De Leon joins us now with details on the case and how police found the suspects. Christina, good morning.
Good morning, David. Good morning, everyone. You know, police say it was Savanah's cell phone that actually led to the big break. They were able to find it at the scene, and with the help of Secret Service, it actually led to the information that led them ultimately to their suspects. Police arresting Ramon Preciado for abuse of a corpse. The 53-year-old did not talk to our cameras as he was taken off to jail. He is accused of helping his son dispose of the bodies of Savanah Soto, her unborn son Fabian, and their father Matthew Guerra after they were killed by his son. Now, police also arresting 19-year-old Christopher Preciado. Police say he is the one who killed the three during a drug deal. Police say they were all murdered on December 21st, just before midnight at another location. They can timeline that because of the medical examiner. Again, December 21st, just before midnight. They were murdered at another location. Then their car was left at the Colinas of Medical Apartments with no relation to anything. They just left their car there with the bodies inside, and that's where they were found days later. On December 28th, police released those surveillance images that we all saw of that truck pulling up next to the missing Kia with the bodies inside in the back of the apartments. And since then, police say they got a number of tips with information.
There was a lot of misinformation out there. These two individuals are the only suspects that we were looking for. They were arrested. There were many names being thrown around on the internet. Those people had nothing to do with this. We vetted them and everything. They didn't have anything to do with these murders.
So police say with the help of that cell phone information, they were able to track it down to that vehicle that matched the description in the surveillance video. Once they got to their home, they knocked on their door. The father answered. They were able to go downtown, give him statements, answer questions. That was enough to give them a warrant and get the information they needed to make these arrests. Now the district attorney will decide on more charges against the pair since there was a death of an unborn child. But for now, the father and son remain behind bars. I did some checking. Their bonds have not been set just yet. They're waiting to see a magistrate judge. And again, we're going to continue to follow the story, let you know more details as we get them. But for now, that is the latest. Reporting live, I'm Christina De Leon. We will send it back to you.
Before you buy $1 million view like this, create a faceless YouTube automation channel first. In fact, this channel right here, Tech Zone, is earning over $1.5 million per year without showing their face. And I personally have 7 of these channels running on.
What does that have to do? I saw an earlier case earlier. Let me see if I can find it.
But we want to turn our attention to Michigan, where a news conference is getting underway in Kalamazoo County. Prosecutors are giving an update on the 2022 disappearance of a mother of 8 children. 35-year-old Heather Kelly was last seen December 10th, 2022, with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Carlos Watts. Her car was found with her blood on the front and back seats, but so far her remains have not been found. We'll bring you the news conference in just a moment, but here is a bit of a setup piece from our Scripps News affiliate, Kalamazoo reporter Marissa Oberly.
Federal court documents filed this week allege Kelly's boyfriend was involved in her disappearance and murder just hours before he escaped from a halfway house. That man, Carlos Watts Jr., does not currently face charges in her case, but the U.S. Attorney's words on the eve of that scheduled announcement indicate that could soon change. In a previous interview with Fox 17, loved ones described 35-year-old Heather Kelly as an outgoing, down-to-earth woman who cared deeply about her kids. The Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office says in December 2022, she left her home around 9 p.m. About an hour and a half later, Kelly called her children to let them know she would be home shortly, only to never return. 2 months later, investigators declared Kelly's disappearance a homicide based on evidence they found, which reportedly included blood in the backseat of her car that KCSO found abandoned and burned in the area of Sprinkle Road near Comstock Township. At the time, the sheriff's office said they took a person of interest into custody. Investigators declined to name them. However, federal court records identify Carlos Watts Jr. as that individual. Those documents alleged while on parole at the Kalamazoo Probation Enhancement Program, his ankle monitor went offline for 8 hours the night Kelly vanished. Then 2 days later, in the morning after police questioned him, Watts allegedly took scissors from a desk at the halfway house and used them to cut off the electronic tether. Records added, analysts found his DNA on clothing by her car. Investigators eventually arrested Watts at a house in Battle Creek and charged him with felony escape. Watts pleaded guilty in July, and on Friday, he's set to be sentenced. In a memorandum filed ahead of that on Monday, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Michigan rejected claims made by Watts in recently written letters to the court that said he ran away because of threats from Kelly's brother. Federal prosecutors instead argued Watts did so to escape prosecution, writing in part, quote, defendant's escape from KPEP was not done to avoid harm from TK, but to avoid the ensuing police investigation. Defendant was escaping criminal liability for murder. Defendant had alternative legal options other than escape if he did feel threatened by TK.
All right, let's head to the press conference now. Kalamazoo County Prosecuting Attorney Jeff Getting is holding that conference. Let's watch.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining me here. Welcome to the Pratt Justice Center. The facilities here are fantastic. The community should be really proud of the building that we have to serve them. My name is Jeff Getting. I'm the Kalamazoo County Prosecuting Attorney. Thank you for joining us as we discuss an update in the Heather Kelly case. As you're all aware, Heather Kelly was last seen on December 11, 2022. Since that time, there has been an ongoing intensive investigation involving multiple agencies and multiple persons within those agencies. I want to specifically point out here with us today the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Rick Fuller, Lieutenant Jim Sandlin, and Detective Meisner. From the Portage Department of Public Safety, Chief Director of Public Safety Nicholas Arnold, Lieutenant Ron Clark, and Detective Jim Lord are with us. This investigation has involved not only our local authorities, but federal authorities as well. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has been actively involved in this, from the FBI. Peter Ellis, the resident agent in charge, and Special Agent Jeff Buttery are here. Not with us, but certainly I need to thank for their involvement in this investigation as well, is the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Michigan. U.S. Attorney Mark Totten and his staff have been instrumental in moving this investigation forward. Last and certainly not least, from my office, from the Kalamazoo County Prosecutor's Office, has been Senior Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Chelsea Huber, who is with us and has been involved in this case since its onset, working with and providing advice and assistance to all of these investigators. As I said, as you know, Heather Kelly was last seen December 11, 2022. We have reached a point in this investigation where we're going to take the next step. That means criminal charges. We have this morning charged Carlos Vance Watts Jr. with the offense of murder for causing the death of Heather Kelly. That charge of open murder carries with it the possibility of a sentence of life without parole if convicted of first-degree murder. If convicted of second-degree murder, the consequence could be up to life in prison with the possibility of parole or any number of years. Mr. Watts currently is in federal custody. He has been in federal custody since the time of this murder. He is scheduled for sentencing by the federal authorities this Friday, January 12th. These charges will allow for an orderly transfer from federal custody to state custody of Mr. Watts after that sentencing occurs. He will remain in federal custody until that time, until the federal authorities have completed that hearing. I anticipate that state authorities will be available and have already worked with the federal marshals to make sure that there is an orderly transfer of Mr. Watts to our custody so that he can face charges. The next step in that process will be an arraignment in front of an 8th District Court judge after he is transferred to state custody. That arraignment has not yet been scheduled because he's still with the feds. At that arraignment, he'll be informed of his charges. An attorney will be appointed if he has not hired one to represent him. Bond will be set in his case, and then further court proceedings will be scheduled by the 8th District Court, starting with a probable cause conference for approximately 1 week after his arraignment, and then a preliminary hearing, which will initially be scheduled within 14 days of his arraignment, but is likely to be adjourned to give everyone an opportunity to properly prepare for that hearing. I'm certain that you will have lots of questions about the case. I want to inform you that I will not be discussing any of the evidence in the case. I'm specifically prohibited ethically from doing that. I will tell you this with regard to the evidence: Heather Kelly's remains have not been recovered. We are moving forward with the charges in spite of that. This is an ongoing investigation. There's been thousands of hours spent by the Sheriff's Department, the Porter's Department of Public Safety, our federal counterparts already in this investigation, and we anticipate that there will be thousands more between now and a trial on these charges. In the meantime, I would remind everyone, if you have any information regarding this case, please contact the authorities. Specifically, you can contact Silent Observer at any time. There remains a reward that is outstanding for information leading to the recovery of Heather's remains. Prior to us discussing this here publicly, I met with the victim's family this morning to inform them that we were moving forward with charges. They asked me to express their gratitude on behalf of and their thanks to all of the investigators that have been involved in this case. They've specifically asked that the media respect their privacy moving forward in this case. They know that we have a lot more work to do, and they're prepared to help us in any way that they can with this, including not discussing the case publicly. I would remind everybody that charges, in this case specifically the charge of murder, is merely an accusation. The defendant remains innocent until his guilt is proven in a court of law. With that, I'd ask if you have any questions, and again caution you that I can't discuss this evidence in any sort of specific way. Go ahead.
I'll shoot for a question. If you can't answer it, you're not hurting my feelings. Is Sprinkle Road still a location of interest, or do you have other locations that are being searched right now?
The police have searched multiple locations during the course of this investigation, including that area as well as other areas. As I said, we've not recovered Heather's remains, so everything remains open in terms of where our investigation may take us in that area.
If applicable, what additional areas have been searched that your office has been informed of where her remains could be found, if not already those existing areas?
I'm not going to go into any details about the investigation that haven't already been made public. As I said, there will be a preliminary examination scheduled in this case. The preliminary examination is a hearing where the prosecutor's office has to show the judge, the court, that we have sufficient information for this case to move forward, specifically that if evidence from which the court can conclude that there is probable cause to believe that a murder was committed and that Mr. Watts is guilty of that crime.
If you can.
Okay, there you have it. The breaking news this morning. Carlos Watts Jr., the boyfriend of the victim in this case, arrested, and he will face charges in state court in the state of Michigan. Let's bring in Krista Ramey, trial attorney in Los Angeles, and he was in the federal system. He's going to be sentenced today. Sounds like they had a nice little time frame here. They gave them time. He was in custody. There was no need for a quick arrest. But this is a no-body prosecution, and no-body prosecutions have some inherent difficulties, do they not?
They do, but I feel like that there's been a lot of them recently, right? We've got one that we're following in Connecticut right now as well. I think that, here you have some pretty significant, overwhelming evidence that one, she is dead because of finding her vehicle burned out with her blood and hair in it. So you had, going missing with 8 children who all, have claimed that she was very devoted to. Mothers of 8 don't just up and leave their kids behind. So I think that the evidence is pretty overwhelming, one, that she is dead, and the timeline pretty well establishes that, that Watts is the guy. So I was wondering why it took so long, but you have to get all that corroborating evidence and piece it all together. And I think that that's just how long it's taken, and they could take their time and do it right because he was in custody this whole time.
Yeah, it's a real luxury, is it not, for the state? Because if he was free, you want him off the streets ASAP. This way it does build your case, gives you that time to go through everything. And it seems as though that's what they've done by the way that this press conference was conducted.
Yeah, it does. And you've got, you do have all this evidence from the very beginning, but you've got it, it was a pretty mild press conference. It was very calm. But, he did lay it out. And I think that, they have the goods and, we'll see, what happens and how this unfolds. But, you've got Watts, taking off his tether, cutting off his tether, but you've got them electronically together at some points throughout the day. Him lying about when the last time he saw her. You've got evidence that really keeps them together through most of the day and evening. So it's going to be, him coming back with like deep scratches into his back and chest. So I think that the goods are there, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, it seems like a very obvious story that jurors will follow very easily, and that this decision was a good one. And the fact that they had that luxury is big, because he was in custody. No need to rush it. Breaking news is Carlos Watts Jr. in custody. He's already in custody, now facing state charges for that murder.
That's crazy that you can't even trust your loved ones.
This Friday.
Tell me what this guy is.
I'm a beekeeper. From the director of Suicide
That is
Squad.
awful.
Good people. Need somebody to
I know you and
It's flammable. Who knows?
what's his name? One Drew Matters wanted me to follow another case. Right now, you're the only one on the stream, Just Mets. I'm gonna stay on no matter what. What was that case name? I know you wanted me to follow another case as well. Let me look at the email. Matter of fact, let me look at the email here. Let me go email on www.g. So then I go to, I got a couple. Oh, let me see the Idaho 4. That's interesting.
Slaughtered, most likely in their sleep, has been destroyed. That's right, totally demolished. Or was it? Is there any speck left behind for scavengers seeking murderabilia? Is there anything left for them? And why?
I don't mind I wouldn't mind if Rich
Would they
shares
do
my
that? This,
like
as the defendant,
if he wants to
suspect
share
number
this.
one
I
in the
probably might see
quadruple
one
slave
on like
Ryan
seeing it.
Koberger,
I get
makes a last-ditch
publicity as
effort
well.
to the judge to have the case thrown out of court. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Crime Stories and on Sirius XM 111. First of all, take a listen to this.
It took just 90 minutes time for the infamous home at 1122 King Road to become nothing more than a pile of rubble. The debris, loaded up by two contractors, taken to a secret area for disposal. The site was combed for not a single item to be left behind for the curious to find and keep as a souvenir. One local who wished to remain anonymous said they wanted nothing but for the
I'm gonna watch the whole thing. It's 44 minutes.
Well, I hope that everything you just heard from our friends at crimeonline.com is true. Joining me in all-star panel to make sense of what we know right now. Joining me, in addition to the other stars on the panel, Andy Kahan, Director of Victim Services and Advocacy, Crime Stoppers Houston, who first coined the phrase murderabilia, and Harold Schechter, author of Murderabilia, A History of Crime in 100 Objects. You know, a lot of people would not be interested in that. I, however, am extremely interested in that. Think about it. A history of crime in 100 objects. What objects and why? He is also the author of Maniac, The Bath School Disaster and the Birth of Modern Mass Murder. Again, that's certainly not everyone's cup of tea. However, it is my cup of tea. You can find him at haroldschechter.com. So let's start with them, then I'll circle back to breaking news reporter with the Washington Examiner, Rachel Schilke, who can tell you everything you want to know about why the crime scene has been destroyed. But first, Andy Kahan joining us. Andy, thank you for being with us, you and Harold both. Andy, explain what is murderabilia. And as far as I know, you coined that phrase and you greatly helped me and inspired me in my first nonfiction book, Objection, where there is an entire chapter devoted to what I learned from you called blood money. Explain.
So, Nancy, murderabilia was something I first discovered primarily being sold on eBay way back in 1999, in which there was this subculture that was selling items that they obtained from high-profile serial killers, mass murderers, and
Okay,
school
number
shooters.
one, Andy
These are-
Kahan, not everyone is as fluent as you and Harold Schechter when it comes to murderabilia. Slow it down, man. Slow it down. You got me drinking from the
Hello,
fire
Nancy
hydrant. Go
Grace.
ahead. Start over.
I've had no bond coffee, so that's why I'm pumped up. So, murderabilia is items that are associated with serial killers, mass murderers, school shooters, high-profile killers that are then peddled on an open market, primarily the internet. So these are items that are produced personally by some of the nation's worst serial killers and mass murderers.
Let
So
me
you have
just
items.
let me just break it down, because when I was in your office there at Victims Advocacy in Texas, I believe you showed me somebody's toenails. Did you show me somebody's toenails or their hair? What was it you showed me that was not the most disgusting thing I've ever seen, but it definitely was in the top 10? What was it you showed me, Andy Kahan?
Bag in my office, I actually have murderabilia items that include serial killer hair samples, which is like Charles Manson's hair that was sold in the form of a swastika. I have actual fingernail clippings from a California serial killer. I have pieces of clothing. I have objects that were actually taken from crime scenes itself.
Stop right there. What kind of objects taken from crime scenes? Because that's what I'm worried about with the demolition of the King Road address. What objects have been taken from a crime scene? Look, anything is fair game. If some ghoul gets, I don't know, a piece of wood, a piece of cement, a piece of fabric, a piece of furniture.
Let me give you an example, Nancy.
Hit me.
John Wayne Gacy's crawl space.
Let me guess.
There were
Dirt.
over 40 people that were bidding for items for dirt that was scooped up and put into a plastic bag where Gacy had buried over 30 young men.
Okay, stop right there. Dirt from Gacy's wall crawl space beneath his home. The clown killer, he would lure, molest, and murder little boys and then bury the bodies in his crawl space. People actually paid money for the dirt. How much money?
That's nasty.
Well, they were paying anywhere from $50 to $100 for little bags of dirt.
Let's go to Harold Schechter joining us, author of Murderabilia, A History of Crime in 100 Objects. Harold, what is wrong with these people? They're ghouls. They're like vampires sucking the marrow out of a crime scene. What is wrong with these people?
Well, I think it's important to put the phenomenon in some kind of historical context. The only thing different now about collecting murderabilia is, as Andy says, you can do it on the internet. But the fact remains, if you look at the history of crime, people have always wanted to own souvenirs connected to very gruesome and sensational crimes.
Why do you say that, Harold Schechter? What's the oldest example of murderabilia that you know of?
Well, back in the, let's say, 1700s, when a condemned murderer was hanged, one of the perks for the executioner was that he could keep the noose.
So
and the executioners would cut the nooses into 1-inch pieces and sell them to these morbid souvenir hunters. One of the interesting things, I'm a
subscribe for a
historian
minute
of
and
true
then she
crime.
can chat.
My book,
It's for everybody, 'cause we
Crime,
got too
going
many
back
fake,
to Shakespeare's
you know.
time. And every time there has been
everyone.
a very notorious murder, people have flocked to the site of the murder and often torn down, the barns or the houses.
Just anyone that wants to come to the stream has to, for them to chat in the chat, they have to be a subscriber for a minute, for 60 seconds. That's the only thing. That if they want to chat in the chat, they just have to be a sub for a minute, and then they can yeah. It's because I don't want any trolls. I'm gonna do that daily, because we don't want trolls here. So if they really want to be here, they'll subscribe. If they don't, then they won't subscribe.
Where these crimes have taken place. I'll give you an example. In the 1870s, I'm sure you've heard of the Bender family. The Bender family was this family who opened a roadside tavern in Kansas in the early 1870s. And when travelers, weary travelers would stay there, the Benders would murder them and take all their possessions and bury their corpses in the apple orchard. When their crimes were discovered, hundreds and hundreds of people descended on the Bender property and basically tore down the house.
If we get like
coming away with these
on the
souvenirs.
chat, then you can turn back on.
It's not a new phenomenon.
No, it's really not. You're right to bring up the Bender family. Guys, this is happening
There's
now.
not that many people in chat.
And I'm going to go to our legal expert to discuss what does this mean legally if and when this case ever goes to trial, that there was no more crime scene to visit. But first, I want you to take a listen to our friends at Crime Online.
The clapboard house, located at 1122 King Road, has been torn down with the entire front of the building out of sight in roughly 15 minutes. According to school
How you
officials,
doing? I hope you have
demolition
a
was
good
set
day.
for during the school's winter break when fewer students would be in the area. The home, however, has been digitized into a 3D model using the latest technology, and according to the prosecution and defense, the actual building will serve no purpose in the upcoming trial. So with all legal sides in agreement, the home that was donated by its owner to the University of Idaho has been razed.
We hear from Crime Online and the legal parties that they're fine with the destruction of the home, but in my mind, those most connected to this case disagree. Take a listen to our cut 711 from Crime Stories.
Yeah,
The
happy
families
hump
of
day
the
to
4
everyone.
students killed in the house on King Road were not in agreement on the demolition. The Gonzalez and Coronado families issued a statement before the demolition, asking the university to wait to tear down the building until Koberger's trial is completed. The Gonzalez family released a statement through their attorney saying the house has evidentiary and emotional value. In the statement, Gonzalez wrote, quote, "The family has stressed tirelessly to the prosecution and the University of Idaho the importance, evidentiary and emotionally, that the King Road house carries, but nobody seems to care enough." She writes, "The family's opinion isn't a priority." The family of Ethan Chapin, who did not live there, offered its support of the demolition. In their statement, the Chapin said the demolition was needed, quote, "for the good of the university, its students, including our kids, and the community of Moscow."
This is what I think about that. I think that there's a very strong possibility the jury would not have seen the crime scene. Seeing the crime scene is very rare. We only hear about it in high profile cases when it does happen. Typically, it does not
Same
happen.
here.
However, better safe than sorry. I think rushing into the demolition of a quadruple homicide was wrong at this juncture. That said, I want to hear about this so-called secret location, and I want to hear about the destruction of the home. We'll circle back to the ghouls that are absolutely trying to get memorabilia from the King Road home. No question about that. Joining me, Rachel Schilke, along with the rest of our experts, breaking news reporter, Washington Examiner. Rachel, thank you for being with us. Tell me about the destruction of the crime scene.
Well, the house was originally supposed to be demolished in August, but they delayed it because they were going through this court process of deciding whether or not they were going to keep the home standing or not. And then eventually the home was destroyed over the students' winter break. The university officials wanted to minimize any emotional damage that it could do on the students. And as we heard in those clips, a lot of the family members were not okay with this. They said that there could be evidentiary value, that this could be very important if there was a jury that could eventually see the home, or at least just to have it there in case the evidence needed to be put forward in court. So definitely was not the majority opinion of most of the people involved.
Where is the so-called secret location where the timbers and the scaffold, everything went? Where is the secret location?
I'm actually not sure where that secret location is.
Well, it won't take long to find out. Joining me again, high-profile experts
I want to
on
know
the
where's
case.
that
Chris
secret
McDonough
location
joining
as
me,
well.
who has visited the scene many, many times. Director at the Cold Case Foundation, former homicide detective, over 300 homicides under his belt, and host of a YouTube channel where I found him, The Interview Room. Chris McDonough, what do you think? As a homicide detective, what do you think?
Nancy, I think in a case like this is a huge mistake. This is just my personal opinion is the fact that that building is now gone. I think the biggest problem the state's going to have, the 3D digital and all of the other forensic stuff that they've collected, that's not an issue. But the acoustics of that home are going to play very important roles. And the reason for that is within 50 feet of that house, there's a video camera that allegedly picked up moaning or something to that effect, and it's in the affidavit. Now, if they didn't have an acoustic engineer go in there and measure, then they've got a real problem. And the other problem I see is early on with the university, it sounded like was pushing this destruction of this house. They said that both the defense and the prosecution would sign off. That's not a problem. They stipulated to that. This is your lane. You know more than anybody on this channel about what we're talking about there. However, in this particular case, the FBI returns later on after the civilian company that was in there to clean the house up. The FBI returns to take digital, a digital footprint. So if I was a defense, immediately I would file motions that is, tainted evidence that they collected, because there's video of this company, the company that was going to tear it down, walking in and out of that house multiple times. And now the FBI shows up just before it's going to be torn down, and they decide to collect additional evidence.
After it's been cleaned, right, Chris McDonough?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what evidence, that evidence will never come in, right, Nancy? I mean, you would fight forever if you were the defense attorney to keep that evidence out.
If I were the
I thought it was a
prosecutor,
smart
I would
move.
not have wanted it torn down. Chris McDonough, absolutely
Absolutely.
not yet. Maybe one day,
Yeah.
of course, but not yet. I don't know why we could not wait till after the trial. Now joining me, high-profile lawyer out of the Jacksonville jurisdiction, former FBI agent, former cop Miami-Dade, never lack of business there, and author of Arrest Proof Yourself. You can find him at DaleCarsonLaw.com. Dale, I got a lot of problems with tearing down the house, and I want to go back to our murderabilia experts, Andy Kahan and Harold Schechter. But Dale Carson, this doesn't mean a hill of beans when we hear both sides agree. Okay, why? Because if it's a mistake that they got rid of the house, the defense can use that later. If there is a conviction, there can be a claim on appeal of ineffective assistance of counsel by that defense
That's
lawyer
exactly
agreeing
right,
to the
Nancy.
demolition. I mean, is nobody thinking the A word? Appeal. You don't want to win the case for it to be reversed on appeal. I just think that we made a mad dash to tear the house down, and for what?
Right. There's no purpose in tearing it down. And I've been to thousands of crime scenes over my life, and I can simply tell you that the destruction of the primary piece of evidence is insane. That house gives you perspective. It gives you a great many other vantage points.
Oh,
Think
Dale,
about
Dale,
yeah.
just right there. After I watched Chris McDonough do his drive-through all over the town, they're very narrow roads. They're streets, very narrow streets. I don't really know that two cars can pass each other, especially in that weather when it's snowing and the roads are icy and the house is up on a hill. What I'm saying is the layout of the home and seeing the home, as you're just saying, is so much different than a picture. So when I saw Chris McDonough driving through, taking a video at about literally 2 miles an hour, maybe, I knew I had to go if I were going to talk about this case knowledgeably. And when I got there, as you're saying, Dale Carson, it's so much different than the photos depict. When I went up that hill and went around the house to the back of the house, it's 3 stories, perched up there, I can just see Koberger right now. I can just see him up there in the dark looking down into that home. I mean, you could throw a softball to it from the vantage point. There's only a thin line of trees between the house and where I was parked. I went there in the morning, I went there in the afternoon, I went there in the evening, and I went there in the dead of night after midnight to look down at the house because somebody left a light on in there, Dale Carson. Completely different than it looks in the pictures, Dale.
And of course, you could see directly in where the women would be during their living there.
Dale, I
really
could even look into the home across the street and tell you the name of the dishwashing liquid sitting at the kitchen counter. That's how easy, how tight the space is. So what you're saying about a picture cannot explain it fully.
No, and that's powerful for a jury. It's probably better for the defense that it is gone from that perspective.
Oh yeah. Was that you, Chris McDonough, jumping in?
Yes. So one of the things that's being overlooked is this company called Extreme Networks. There was a search warrant filed on January 25th, 23. And in that, they're looking for network intrusion into that residence. There was one of the affiants there is a detective by the name of Neil Urrig. He now works for the Secret Service, and his expertise is network intrusion. Well, whose laptop are they looking for? If we read that search warrant, it says description or decrypted access to the following computer: Extreme Network Service Tags, Kaylee. They're looking for network intrusion into Kaylee's computer, and I would submit to you just what you
please stop
said.
talking like that. Network intrusion. Are you saying somebody was trying to hack Kelly Gonsalves's computer? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I would submit to you, it's whoever, if it's BK, he's sitting in the back of that house, to your point, looking through those windows and tapping into the network in that home. Now, the jury...
once again, you totally freaked me out, Chris McDonough. Dr. Cyril Wecht joining us, renowned forensic pathologist, medical legal consultant, author of so many books, including The Life and Deaths of Cyril Wecht, Memoirs of America's Most Controversial Forensic Pathologist. I would be inclined to agree with that. Dr. Weck, thank you for being with us. You've seen so many, many crime scenes and performed so many, many autopsies. What evidence, Dr. Weck, could have been left behind?
In the case of John F. Kennedy, all the statements that your guests have made are extremely applicable and extremely relevant. They're talking about taking down the Texas School Book Depository building and even maybe reconstructing the grassy knoll area where the most critics believe additional shots were fired. So I strongly believe, and without repeating everything that the gentleman and lady have made, are extremely important. I concur fully and strongly agree that there is no need, no rush, no purpose in tearing down the critical physical sites associated with those particular murders.
I agree with you, Dr. Wecht. And for all I know, the jury may not be allowed to visit. They may not even want to visit, which I doubt. I'm sure they'll want to visit it. But now that opportunity is forever gone. It cannot be Humpty Dumpty. You can't put it back together again. Why they did it, I don't know. I'm not saying never do it. I'm not saying don't do it before the trial. Back to Harold Schechter and Andy Kahn, and then we're going to a highly recognized psychoanalyst joining us out of Beverly Hills, Dr. Bethany Marshall. Back to you, Andy Kahn. I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel Schilke, I understand that all of the lumber, all of the foundation, everything, the bookshelves, the whatever, the kitchen, the bathroom articles, everything was raised early in the morning by 8 a.m. under the cover of darkness. The Clapboard House at 1122 King Road in Moscow was gone after just 90 minutes. I understand that everything was taken, Rachel Schilke, is this correct, and buried in an undisclosed location. Is that true, Rachel?
That's what a lot of the reports are saying. It obviously has not been officially confirmed, but it is possible that all of those materials are still with us. We just are not sure where they are at this moment.
Andy Kahan, is it your experience that these ghouls, they're akin
I
to
think it was a very
grave
bad
robbers,
mistake.
they'll
Helfrich
stop
and
at nothing to get a piece of this house?
No, and there's actually precedent for this, but the key distinguishing piece on the two other homes that were raised in Ohio, one which was Ariel Castro, that you might remember was the one that kidnapped and sexually tortured 3 young women for over a decade and kept them in his house. Part of his plea deal was, again, after he was convicted, that his house would be razed and torn down so that nobody could get a, quote, a piece of a prize that could be sold. Ohio did the same thing with Anthony Sowell, a serial killer that murdered 11 women at that time. After he was convicted, key word, after convicted, they razed his house again. So I get why they would want to do this, but I agree with you and some of your other panelists that there's no real sense of urgency right now. But trust me, this is just going to be the beginning and the merchandising of Brian Kohberger, because when he actually does get convicted and gets in the Idaho penitentiary, the murderabilia dealers are going to come after him in droves because he's a treasure trove of profiting for them.
Harold Schechter joining us, author of Murderabilia, A History of Crime in 100 Objects. Harold Schechter, what do you believe that these ghouls would try to get from the home?
Well, I mean, you know, any little object connected with it immediately achieves, again, this kind of ghoulish value for murderabilia collectors. You know, in the past, I wrote a book, for example, about a mass murderer named Anton Probst back in the 1860s, who butchered an entire family. He lured each member one by one into the barn and then slaughtered them with an axe. And again, when those crimes were uncovered and these hordes of people descended on the site, they, ripped up the floorboards of the, of the barn. And the ones that, the pieces that had particular value to them were ones that had bloodstains on them.
Oh,
So again, that illustrates two things. One, this is not something new. I think one of the important things that it's important to consider is why we are so drawn to and fascinated, by these lurid, sensational, horrific crimes to begin with.
Harold Schechter,
That's
I've wondered that for many, many years. I don't know the answer to that. And I'm just a JD. Okay. We need to shrink. You're right, Schechter.
that's right.
Let's go straight to Dr. Bethany Marshall, renowned psychoanalyst, joining us out of the Beverly Hills jurisdiction. Bethany, what is wrong with these people? Did you hear what Schechter said? And I want to hear from Andy Kahn as well. The floorboard would have more value. And I actually feel like I'm eating a dirt sandwich right now. I want to just clean my tongue off. The floorboard would have more value if there was blood on it. Sydney, please give me the tea. I think I need something a little stronger than tea right now. But how could that be? Thank you.
I love
It's got
Nancy.
more value if these victims' blood. You know what? I just had a flashback. My flashback is this, Dr. Bethany. When I had to testify at my fiance Keith's murder trial, I remember coming down, the witness seat was high up, had to go up 2 flights of stairs to get to it. It was equal to the judge up on his bench. And when I came down, I passed the state's table and Keith's bloody denim shirt was there. I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around who would want to buy a bloody floorboard. And what Harold Schechter told me, and I'm pretty sure Andy Kahn's going to agree, that floorboard or that mattress or that bed sheet would fetch more money on the internet if the victim's blood was on it. Who are these people?
Nancy, I have to believe that these collectors of this murderabilia, present panel excluded, of course, are taking some secret delight in the pain and suffering of the victims, just like a murderer or a sadist takes delight in the suffering of the victims. So do these collectors. Nancy, people feel that just because somebody is famous, they must be fascinating. So like a BTK killer or a Casey Anthony, just because we know a lot about them and they are talked about on the air, these people must be fascinating. I want a piece of them. But the fact is, criminals, murderers, perpetrators, they are incredibly boring people. Have you ever sat and interviewed one? I'm sure you have. The crimes may be very notorious and sort of horrible and hard to wrap one's mind around, but when you sit with a criminal, their excitement is not in the conversation with you or about their travels or their children or the latest book they've read. They're so preoccupied with their internal sexualized, fetishized world of wanting to kill people that they're not even present in the room with you. So I think the public should not confuse these criminals and their acts as being fascinating in any way. And the fact is, when you have a floorboard with blood on it in your home, you yourself become proxy to the crime. I know that's a dramatic statement, not in reality. It's not like you could be prosecuted for it, but you are delighting in the anguish of the victims. You are ignoring what their families have gone through, and you have a whole imagination about what happened that has nothing to do with
I'm trying
reality.
to figure out who these people are. Andy Kahn, you had to buy your toenail and hair stash. I just can't believe I went to law school 3 years at Mercer University, and it took me 2 years at NYU to get an LLM in criminal and constitutional law. And I'm saying your toenail stash. I never thought those words would come out of my mouth, but they did. You had to get it from somewhere. What freaks are dealing in a killer's toenails? And I agree and disagree with Dr. Bethany Marshall. I think some people want a piece of these victims. They want the bloody bed sheets. They want the bloody floorboard. And can you imagine the pain, Andy Kahn, of the victims' families? I mean, I'm sitting here right now wondering for the first time, because I really don't like to think about it and I try to avoid thinking about it. What happened to Keith's bloody shirt? Where is it? Did they destroy it? Is it in a plastic bag somewhere in an evidence room? I mean, can you imagine? And Andy, do you really think these ghouls are going to give up? They're going to find where the home remains were buried. They're going to find it, and they're going to try and get it. But back to my original question, who are these people? You had to buy those toenails somewhere. From who?
You know, from a victim's perspective, and as someone who's worked with homicide survivors for over 30 years, there's absolutely nothing more nauseating and disgusting when you find out the person who murdered one of your loved ones now has items being hawked by third-party dealers simply for pure profit. Like it or not, you have small groups of people out here, for whatever reason, idolize serial killers, mass murderers, high-profile killers, and they want to own a piece of their soul. And this is a untapped market that they've realized that not only can they own a piece of whatever they have, they can also make money off of it. So you have about 7 dealers throughout the country that specialize in obtaining items from high-profile killers strictly for the purpose of profiting. And anything that you can get that has something associated with the victim, because I have actually seen items that were actually used to kill their victims being sold at an open market. That is like the ultimate get. It's like a treasure hunt, and nothing is going to stop them from trying to obtain items from the Idaho killer.
Stop, please. I've got to go to Dale Carson on something. Dale, do you ever, I mean, you and I have tried a lot of cases. Everybody on this panel has dealt with a lot of similar cases. Well, not similar to Idaho, because that's quadruple murder, but murder cases. Dale, do you ever just get sick to your stomach? Because everything Andy Kahn just said, Harold Schechter, Dr. Cyril Wecht, everything they said is correct. But something about, hey, what about this? Do you remember in the Bible how the Roman soldiers gambled to try to get Christ's robe and his crown of thorns, all that was left, and took it somewhere? I mean, as far as I can, thinking all the way back in history, how callous and awful that is, Dale, just thinking of someone trying to get remnants of this home. And the more gory and the closer that remnant was to one of the victims, the more valuable it would be. Do you ever just want to quit, Dale Carson, when you hear things like that?
Oh, absolutely. And you've missed one salient point.
Ooh.
It's the smell of a recent crime scene. And it's troubling because the lives are lost for basically no reason at all. And yet, all the material wealth that they have gathered all these years is of no meaning at this point. Frightening.
Guys, we're trying to make sense of what has happened. Who is this, Harold or Dr.
This
Weck?
is Harold. Can I just interject for a moment?
Please do, yes.
Since you brought up the crucifixion. So, I mean, one word that we haven't been using so far in this discussion is evil. And, you know, evil exerts its own very dark fascination. Often in the newspaper articles that I've read, when reporters have seen these crowds of morbid curiosity seekers descend on these places and come away with bloody splinters and so on, they talk about them as relics. And, there's a kind, they're almost the flip side, the dark side, the shadow side of saints' relics. Saints' relics contain something of the holy and the sacred. A lot of the murderabilia, and again, this is, not that these people are conscious of it, but they're little objects, that sort of resonate with the power of evil. And there's something about, there's a dark attraction to that. For whatever reason.
There is, I don't know why.
Perhaps this psychoanalyst on our panel, whose name unfortunately
Dr.
forgotten,
Bethany Marshall. Hey, let's follow up on what Schechter is saying. You're hearing Harold Schechter, author of Murderabilia. What about it, Dr. Bethany?
Well, I think it is an aspect of evil. I think that because it's not just like othering, where you know that somebody suffered, but you're kind of callous to it and you don't really care. This is at a whole nother level. This is actually taking delight in somebody's suffering. That's really very different. It's having the bloody shirt or the bloody floorboard and looking at it and saying, aha, I have something. And you were right. I have something of the victim. I have something of the crime. I'm inserting myself into the notoriety of this case, and I feel important because of it. It's really, in one drop of blood is an entire world of anguish and hurt. The anguish of the families, the anguish of the victim, the anguish of the communities, the reverberating effect of the crime. And these people are clutching this one little relic, and they are happy. How different is that, Nancy, than the perpetrator who acts out? I mean, there's a difference between impulse and action. These people are thinking, the perpetrator is doing, but they're thinking the same thing the perpetrator's thinking. They're just not acting out on it.
Dr. Cyril Weck,
I kind of agree with the
renowned
lady.
pathologist who has seen so many high-profile autopsies, performed them, and been to so many crime scenes. Dr. Weck, in your opinion, what could have benefited this jury had they been able to go to the crime scene?
I believe it would have been highly relevant for them to have gone to the crime scene and to have specifically visualized themselves from the 6th floor southeast core window where they claim Oswald did the shooting, and then to have placed themselves downstairs where the shots were heard and see whether it fits in with the audio and with the video evidence, and also to have gone then to the grassy knoll area, a short distance away, where the critics claim there was a second shooter. Extremely important. I think the points that everybody has made are very valuable. There's no reason in the world to destroy a highly relevant crime scene unless it's imperative for purposes of some significant new construction.
Dr. Weck,
Nancy,
you
let me
are
say
so
something here.
right, because just recently I went back to the site of the JFK assassination, and it was completely different than anything I had ever read about or imagined. The grassy knoll, the book depository, the fence across the knoll, the bridge where many people speculated the second shot was fired. It's completely different than anything I imagined. And when I say I want a true verdict on this case, I mean a true verdict. I don't mean a verdict based on speculation about what the crime scene may have been or what I thought it was. I mean what I know the crime scene is. I never tried a single case without visiting the crime scene. I think I hear Chris McDonough jumping in, and you mentioned something earlier about acoustics and what could have been heard next door. Well, I think the jury's going to have a question about what the survivors heard, Dylan and Bethany, and I'm just curious, will that be an issue at trial? Which they could have figured that out if they could have gone to the scene.
Nancy, I think it's going to be. I agree with you 100%, because at this point, the whole purpose of maintaining that crime scene, as we all know, is that 1%, just that 1%. The 99 maybe there, i.e. the confidence of the state, et cetera. But it's that one juror that sits in that jury box and makes the determination of whether or not they believe the testimony that they're hearing. There's nothing that can replace all five senses being immersed into that crime scene. Did one of the witnesses hear the stairs creaking when she testifies that Kohberger was coming down the stairs? Did she look through her door? And if so, what was her vantage point in terms of visually? What could she see? What could she feel? And it's going to go just like that, I think, in the jury.
That's an excellent point.
And Nancy, to add to that, what about when the jurors see a teddy bear on one of the students' beds and they feel the reality that these were human beings? The collectors of murderabilia dehumanize the victims, but also beyond the six senses is the humanization of the young people who live there. As I was saying earlier, seeing that they may have had a frat party, or maybe there's a book lying around pertaining to a class they were taking or some of their studies, a pair of sunglasses, a picture of them on a boat. To picture and feel the victims is a way to empathically immerse yourself into what happened to them and who they were as human beings. And that's quite the opposite of these ghouls, as you refer to them, that are just picking away at the scraps of that house. It's to make these young people real. And you can't do that by looking at a 3D scan or a picture or blood spatter
Another
evidence.
issue is to Andy Kahn joining us. We have been told, of course, all the work was done by 8 a.m. It was done under the darkness of the morning hours, that the remains of that home have been taken and buried and are being guarded by police. All you have to do is search dump locations in Moscow, Idaho, and I've already pulled up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so how hard is that going to be for these ghouls to locate it and wait for that one moment and get something of that home?
There's a will, there's a way, just like in anything else. We've seen prison guards take items from high-profile killers. There was a prison guard, believe it or not, that got a hold of Jeffrey Dahmer's shaving kit once Dahmer was killed in prison, and then put it up for sale. So there's, if you want something bad enough, you're going to find a way to get it. And right now, in this day and age, Kohberger is about as big a name as it gets in the murderabilia industry. And anybody that can get a piece of anything that he has, anything that's associated with him, and especially from a murder scene, it will be found and it will end up being sold on the open market.
We wait as justice unfolds. Goodbye, friend. Guys, thank you for watching Crime Online with Nancy Grace here on YouTube. To get the very latest, subscribe to Crime Online here.
That was interesting. This one was definitely interesting. This video. We'll go back to my email because I want to keep that just in case. But then we got the girl held in the garage for 5 years. Wow, that's crazy. People are doing some crazy shit.
Is this real? Is this really happening in this day and age? Sadly, based on the court documents I'm just getting, it is real. A woman pregnant being held captive in a garage, padlocked from the outside with nothing but a mattress, a commode that doesn't work. When she is found, she is emaciated down to 70 pounds. Her hair, quote, crusty, her clothes filthy, no shoes. Her body was quote, pungent. I'm reading from the court documents because how long had she been in there being raped, sex attacked? 5 years? It's almost too much to take in that this could happen again. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Crime Stories and on Sirius XM 111. The story's almost too much to take in, but let's just start with the commander at the Houston PD, Michael Collins.
The female who was in the original report, who was being held captive inside that room, allegedly. We believe at this time that she was the only individual in that room. I don't know how many. This is the first time I've been at this location, so I'd hate to think there were any others that were in that circumstance as well, but it's something we will definitely follow up on. Approximately 30-year-old female. I really can't release her name right now until I follow up with the investigative division and our public information officer. Because again, my main concern is, of course, I want to share information as freely as possible, but I also don't want to jeopardize anybody's safety.
Jeopardize anyone's safety. Wow. Well, someone has already been padlocked into a garage, raped over and over and over for years. Did the neighbors not notice something was odd? Let's listen to more to the commander, Michael Collins.
It's disturbing on a personal level. My heart goes out to the woman involved because she is a victim, but anybody with children or anybody with a family member who has struggled in their life has been preyed upon by those who are out for their own ends at the expense of others. It makes me sick as a human being, and I can tell you,
it makes me sick as well.
We are here for the citizens of Houston. We're here for the community, and we're here to make sure that this individual and her family gets justice.
Wow, what will justice look like in this case? If the allegations are true, this woman being held captive 5 years, raped repeatedly. I'm looking at the charge in this case. A known rapper apparently holds her, grabs her off the street, holds her locked inside a garage. She never saw anyone else in the residence. She could hear the defendant arguing with someone. On numerous occasions, the defendant would come out, rape her. When she would try to escape, he would grab her, drag her back in, and lock padlocks, repeatedly physically threatening to beat her, assault her, force her to use crack cocaine, which is a nightmare in itself. You can't get off
crazy.
of it.
Why people do stuff like that?
In addition to holding her against her will, locked in the garage for at least 5 years, repeat sex acts on the victim against her will, even when she begged not to. It goes on and on, only occasionally giving her chips and snacks for food, never actual food or a full meal. Again, thank you for being with us. I know these facts are hard to hear, but as you will see later in our program, this is by far not the first time a woman has been held captive in a garage, in a home, in a shipping container, in a basement, in all sorts of bizarre locations, starved, beaten, threatened, and raped. That's what we're talking about. But this woman's ordeal at the hands of who we believe to be Lee Carter, aka Viper, the rapper, 5 years. Joining me in all-star panel, but first I want to go straight out to Dave Mack, crimeonline.com investigative reporter. Where did this happen?
Houston, Texas, Nancy.
You know, I'm trying to get an
Texas is
idea
crazy.
of how this goes down in a neighborhood, and nobody knows that there's a woman padlocked in the garage, and the padlocks were on the outside of the garage. I know that much, But when you think about it, I'm going to go straight out to Phil Waters, former homicide detective for Houston PD, this jurisdiction, now president CEO of Kindred Spirits Investigations and Securities. And you can find him there, kindredspiritsinvestigations.com. Phil, I'm blasting the neighbors, but you know what? If I happen to notice, which I may not, a padlock, this big, 3-5 inches big on somebody's garage, that would not lead me to go bam on the garage to find out if somebody's in there.
Well, no, and thanks for having me on the panel, Nancy. I will tell you, this is not the circumstances in terms of the neighbors and so forth and so on. Not terribly surprising to me, given the area and the people that even if they suspect something's going on, I mean, the tendency is that they don't want to get involved in things, and so there's not necessarily. I don't blame the neighbors for not saying anything because they may not have known. They may have suspected some things. They know this guy. He's a rapper in Houston, so he's got some sort of fame attached to him, I guess, in a local way.
It's
so
kind of
I'm not
reminding
terribly
me a
surprised.
little bit of R. Kelly. Remember, R. Kelly held all of
Oh,
those
yeah,
women
sure.
in his, well, he had
Right.
several compounds and residences,
Right.
domiciles.
Right.
Karen Stark, the case of R. Kelly shocked everyone, where multiple women were being held against their will in his various compounds and domiciles, horribly mistreated and being used as sex slaves. And somehow people tend to blame the victim, like they wanted to be there. When this woman, I'm reading in the affidavit how her hair was, quote, crusty, filthy clothes, no shoes, her body, she stunk. That is not willingly. And he had the woman strung out on crack cocaine. I mean, Karen Stark, I've been in so many crack houses. I can't even count them. The people in there are like zombies. I remember one I went into, Karen Stark, I was looking for a witness in inner city Atlanta, and there was no furniture in there. There was one sofa that had been burned up. It was upholstered with kind of a plaid material. It had been burned up, and you could see into the foam rubber and down. And that was the only piece of furniture. And they were actually cooking crack in the middle of the floor. Okay,
And
in the
that's-
floor, they had an
Yes.
open fire cooking crack in the apartment on the floor. And people were just laying around like zombies, sitting like zombies, strung out. This woman out of her mind. But somehow people say, wow, in 5 years, she could have gotten away. They said the same thing about R. Kelly's victims. Not true.
Not true. And Nancy, when you're talking about crack, I mean, they would give it to rats and find that the rats would actually starve themselves, be dead or on the verge of death, and prefer to do crack. It's that addictive. So nothing else matters. They don't pay any attention to the environment as you described because they are that addicted. And I heard allegedly that this guy said that he was keeping girls for their own protection, that he was trying to protect them.
This guy or R. Kelly?
This guy, the guy that we're talking about. And I feel like R. Kelly was kind of saying the same thing, like, I'm taking care of them, they can't take care of themselves.
To Dave Mack, crimeonline.com investigative reporter, when the cops do find her, what exactly do they find? Describe her living conditions.
It was a filthy, nasty garage. It was a single car garage, Nancy, not a very big one, but single car garage. And it had been converted into this apartment / jail cell. It was filthy with a mattress on the floor. There was a toilet of some type, but it didn't flush. There were the windows had been boarded up. And as you mentioned when we started, she had an odor, about a pungent odor. The whole area stunk. according to her, she hadn't had a shower in 2 months. When they started looking around the room, they did find, she was wearing filthy clothing. The fire department actually had to pry open the garage door to get inside there because it hadn't been used as a garage. It had been used as this, prison jail cell that she could not get out of. So beyond the filth, beyond the no toilet, beyond the no water, you're talking about, and the snacks. The only thing she really ever got to eat were little snacks here and there, and there was trash on the floor from that.
And I'm reading directly from court documents. The woman, extremely malnourished, weighing approximately 70 pounds, with a pungent smell coming from her body. Her hair was, quote, crusty. She wore filthy clothes, had no shoes. The fire department had to pry open the garage door. And inside, officers found the door had a lock on it. Windows were boarded up. There was a toilet that did not flush, a sink, a mattress with fresh vomit covering it, a TV, and chips and Twinkies. Now, what we're learning, actually a lot about how this woman ended up in the garage. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave Mack, but apparently the victim told police that 4 to 5 years before, it turns out it was 5 years before, at that time she was pregnant and panhandling on the street and at that time, the defendant pulled his car over and gave her $1. He left, but he came back and asked her, did she need help? She got in the car for help. He took her to his home and then put her in the garage and started beating her, forcing her to have sex with him and take pills and use crack cocaine against her will. What more
You're dead on accurate with all.
What more can you tell me about how she ends up padlocked in a garage?
Well, we've mentioned the panhandling. She's very pregnant. We don't know how pregnant. We know that she says she was pregnant as she was panhandling up and down the street. That she was lured there because he had the promise of shelter, food. You need help. I've got your help right here. He had already given her $1 and drove off. So when he came back to her, she was already warmed up to the guy. She was willing to be nicer to him. And when he gets her back to his home, all I could think of, Nancy, of course, it's a big sham, a big trick. Come on down here, you can get a shower or whatever. And as soon as she is in the room that she cannot get out of without his help, he owns her. He's got everything. And she finds herself lost in no man's land. Now, the part about the drugs, Nancy, you've dealt with this for a long time. You know the effects that some drugs have on people. They can become almost immediately addicted.
Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I've got to tell you what happened last night, Dave Mack. Last night we were sitting at the table. We were eating dinner. And my daughter said, Mom, is it genetic that you're a teetotaler? She said, because Mama, my grandmother, her great-grandmother, was a teetotaler. Grandmommy is a teetotaler, and you're a teetotaler. So, and she said, and I'm a teetotaler. Of course, she just turned 16. Of course, she's a teetotaler. But she said, is it genetic? And I started laughing. I'm like, no, sweetheart. I've just been in so many court cases, literally thousands of court cases. Typically, I would see them, and I'm going to go to a renowned attorney, Alan Bennett, joining me, former assistant DA, partner now at Gunter, Bennett, and Anthus, gbafirm.com. Alan, literally thousands, and that's hard to take in, but over 10 years of handling, 300 or 400 cases a month, it adds up, right? So I would see, the first one I saw was this gorgeous female stockbroker, and she came into court. I was what they called a pony at that time. I was assigned to a seasoned district attorney, and I was learning from him, and he was really a great prosecutor. And that may have been the first guilty plea I ever took from someone. She was beautiful. She had been a very successful stockbroker, but she got addicted. It was alcohol. And she lost her license as a stockbroker, her job. Her husband left her. She had 2 or 3 children. She never got to see them. And she, I think, was a habitual violator. She had pulled a DUI, 8 or 9 times until it was
Wow.
finally a felony. She lost everything. That's the first time I saw what alcohol or drugs could do to someone. I had never seen that in my life. And then from there, it really went downhill. People burning the house down, trying to cook crack, people getting shot in drug deals. And I mean, people with jobs, with children and families and homes that were functioning alcoholics or functioning dope addicts. You're darn right I'm a teetotaler. I mean, Alan Bennett, I can't really count the number of cases like that.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Nancy. And I myself have seen the exact same thing in my career, people losing everything. When crack cocaine first became prevalent in the early 90s, we thought that was the worst thing in the world when I was a prosecutor. And later in my career, coming to find that methamphetamine is even worse. Lady speaking earlier a moment ago is absolutely correct. Research is clear. Rats, given the choice of cocaine or food or sex, will choose cocaine over food or sex until they eventually starve to death. Crack cocaine is what we refer to as chasing the dragon. Research indicates that the first time someone uses crack cocaine, they get a certain high, a certain euphoria. The second time they use crack cocaine, it's not quite as intense as the first time. And that is why crack is believed to be so highly addictive, is because the person is constantly chasing the dragon. They're always trying to get back to that first initial super intensive high they got the first time. And yes, I have seen people living in $250,000 homes, driving Mercedes Benz, and they try crack cocaine. And the first time they try it, it suddenly becomes the single most important thing in their life. And their life then becomes dedicated to getting more crack cocaine. So absolutely, that is a common phenomenon.
Let me go to a special guest joining us, Alan Bennett. Not that you're not special. Rachel D. Fisher. You may know her name because I call on her often when I have health problems in cases that it's hard for me to understand. Rachel D. Fisher is a forensic nurse expert. She's a sex assault nurse examiner, a SANE, sex assault nurse examiner. She's an expert witness. She's a PI and author of Taking Back the Pen. Now, she is at Forensic Nursing Consulting and Education. Okay, here's her website, legalrnconsult.org. That's a mouthful, Rachel, but there's really no way to abbreviate all of your qualifications. Rachel Fisher, this woman, 70 pounds. I don't know what happened to the baby.
Oh, that's not good.
She was pregnant when she was kidnapped. I don't know what happened to the baby, but at 70 pounds, this woman was near death.
It'll be interesting to see when there's a subpoena out for records from medical that just went out within the past
That is
2 days.
heartbreaking.
So hopefully, once they get the records, they'll see if there was any indication of when the birth was, what happened with the mom's health, the child's health. Because when the patient comes to the hospital, the mother and the child are both seen as victims if they're getting forensic exams, and CPS typically gets involved. So if that hopefully we'll be able to see those records soon, but the 70 pounds post childbirth, I mean, that's not healthy for anybody who didn't just give birth or is of childbearing age. And she's about 32 years old. But yeah, that's not a healthy state.
Not at all. And as we were hearing from Alan Bennett earlier, and in my experience of people that have ever been exposed to crack, once you're on it, and you'll do anything to get the next hit. Your children don't matter, your job, your career, your Lord, nothing matters except getting that hit. Is everybody sitting down? You may need to lay down for this. And Dave Mack, I'm not sure I've got this correct, but you just tell me if I'm wrong. Please correct me, because I learned this in court. If you don't have all the facts and you don't know the law, you're screwed. You better go in there with the facts and the law as your sword and your shield, and don't be afraid to wield them. These are the facts I'm understanding, Dave Mack. A neighbor told cops that Carter once said he had 3 women in his residence and he owned other homes where he, quote, kept women.
Wow.
The neighbor said Carter described the women as, quote, ungrateful because they, quote, want more food and drugs. Damn them straight to hell. They want food. How dare they get hungry when they're locked in the garage for 5 years? Dave Mack, did you learn that fact that I just learned?
That guy's a
Yes,
scumbag.
ma'am. I saw it just as you did, and it's so disturbing. This whole story is so disturbing.
It's
Nancy. I
actually
don't
making my
know.
stomach hurt now that
Yeah.
I mean, this is so R. Kelly. This is like the poor man's R. Kelly. Did you hear Viper, the rapper, is most well known? Man, I can't wait. I bet Alan Bennett would do a backflip as a defense attorney. Okay, listen to this. He's most well known for the 2008 album, You Cowards Don't Even Smoke Crack. The uploads of his music have received millions of views on YouTube. Speaking of crack, I mean, there's no way with a straight face he can say to a jury, or his defense attorney can say to a jury, my guy would never touch crack. He even wrote a song, a rap song about you cowards don't even smoke crack. Ouch. That hurts, Alan Bennett. That's not going to help anything. I'm so happy. There's one glimmer of happiness for me is that he wrote that song and performed it and put it on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely. We have seen countless examples of prosecutions of folks who the state may or may not have as much evidence as they would like, and then through current forensic abilities to go through, and of course he's just out there in front of it all, but the current forensic abilities to go through someone's social media, through their phones, through their computers, and their own words ultimately end up convicting them or increasing their punishment. And he's not even hiding it. He's putting it out there on an album.
And
That
one
would
more
be-
thing, in addition to his album, Alan Bennett, and I'm rushing us, I know, because I've got so much information on this case. You know, the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, protects all of us from unreasonable searches by the state, you know, the feds, the local cops, anyone state related. But the Constitution doesn't protect you from blabbing to your neighbors. So there's no way these statements to
I
the
love
neighbor
Nancy.
Carter
She's
allegedly made, that he had 3 women in his residence and other homes where he, quote, kept women who were, quote, ungrateful because they, quote, wanted more food and drugs. That's who we're talking about. Again, it's a poor man's R. Kelly. But the women suffered the same way as R. Kelly's victims suffered, except this woman was starved, 70 pounds. I mean, to you, Rachel D. Fisher, forensic nurse expert, how could she even think rationally at 70 pounds?
So being on medications and, crack is listed in this case, that on top of it, the lack of nutrition, and then your mind, you have a physiological addiction to the substance. So that's what these predators prey on, is a vulnerability. So we know that she had a vulnerability. She needed a place to go. He offered her that. Coercion, fraud, giving her, false hopes. I'll take care of you. But then he gives her drugs. And once you have that high and you keep going, you need more. So you're going to have a physical response to that. So even if you get what they call rescued, law enforcement can take her to the hospital. She can leave, but they always say, why do they go back? Well, they have a physical addiction that their body is going to, have a lot of really bad things happen if they don't get that next fix. So one of the main reasons they go back to their abuser is because of that hit, and nobody addresses the substance, misuse portion of it, and it's not disclosed. So on top of the lack of nutrition, it's also the physiological addiction that they're being forced to have in order to stay, in that situation that's very unsafe, because then their mind is gone. They don't even understand the situation they're in, and nothing else really matters because they don't even know what's happening.
And again, we have no idea what happened to the baby. The baby's gone. Did she give birth? Did he beat her so severely she miscarried? Did he force her to have an abortion? Another question is, it's not really a question, it's a miracle that she managed to get out. I want you to take a listen to our friend, investigative reporter for Crime Stories, Nicole Parton, in our Cut 1.
A woman called 911 from a texting app and said she was being held against her will. According to KPRC, police rescued the woman from the garage where she was being held captive. The victim weighed about 70 pounds and, according to officers, looked extremely malnourished and filthy. She had not showered in 2 months. Investigators went inside the garage and found a broken toilet, a dirty mattress covered in fresh vomit, a box of chips, a few Twinkies, clothes, and diapers. There was no shower in the garage, so she would be taken inside the home from time to time. Police took the woman to the hospital.
Now, what we are learning in the last hours, new images showing the inside of the victim's filthy garage cell. A woman held captive in a dingy garage for 5 years. Joining me right now, William Slater, joining us out of Chicago, cybersecurity expert and the Chief Information Security Officer at Slater Technologies. You can find him at billslater.com. Bill, explain to me about this texting app. She called 911 she got her mitts on his laptop, I guess, in one of her very, very few chances to go in and take a shower. She got on his laptop and through some type of texting app called 911. How did that happen?
Oh, when you install an application, typically it creates a place in the browser where when you install it, you select your username and type in a password. And that's one of the reasons it's so dangerous to get into people's computers if you got access and start going through their browser history and finding what they've been looked at, because everybody is so lazy these days. They just go to the website and it automatically logs them in. So she was logged in as him, and
this is what I'm learning about this app I was asking about. Take a listen to our Cut 4, Nicole Parton.
The victim was reportedly able to use her kidnapper's laptop to contact police on a free text app, Text Now. It offers nationwide phone service for free. Download the app to make calls without paying a phone bill. You can use your existing number or get a new one and text or call for free on Wi-Fi instantly.
So is that how she did it, William Slater? A lot of people have never heard of Text Now, but it's basically a free phone service through Wi-Fi.
Correct, and he was already using that as a user, and she probably saw the icon on his desktop and clicked on it, and boom, she could get in. It's a very easy to use application.
You know, we are learning also that she tried multiple times to escape. Take a listen to investigative reporter Rachel Bonilla from Crime Online in our Cut 3.
Police say they have been called to the home 8 times in the past year. The woman says he took her to the garage where he boarded up the windows. A neighbor tells KTRK that on one occasion, he was speaking to the police about what was going on in the home, and as he is talking to the cops, the woman comes crawling out of the window, clawing her way out, 8 months pregnant. The woman said she would beg Carter every day to let her go, but he would threaten to hurt her. And the times she tried to escape, the man would catch her and take her back to the garage.
So let me understand something, Dave Mack. A neighbor says that on one occasion, he was speaking to police. So obviously, a neighbor did call police, was speaking to police about what was going on, and the woman actually claws her way out of a window. Did that happen, Dave Mack?
Yes, ma'am. That is exactly what happened.
Is it true, Dave Mack, that on some occasions she would actually get to go to the hospital, but he would always get her and take her back to the garage and beat her?
Exactly true.
So what do we know about that, Phil Waters, former homicide detective, Houston PD, now at Kindred Spirits PI? Phil, that begs the question, Phil. Did the hospital not notice something was wrong? Did he take her there after she miscarried the baby? I mean, how do you explain that, Phil?
Well, I don't know that I can. My concern is that the hospitals, if they recognize or see any signs of abuse, sexual abuse, malnourishment, those kinds of factors with a patient being brought into the hospital, they are compelled by law to report to police at that moment in time that they're seeing something here that has caused some concern. So I'm struck by the fact that, at least in the affidavit, it says that she had gone to the hospital and he up picking her up and taking her home. So I'm not sure where the disconnect came. And I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that when she went to the hospital, she did not make an outcry? There was nothing there that would indicate to the personnel there at the hospital that there was something going on here in terms of abuse, and they did not notify law enforcement. So there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't know, and there's always a backstory. So I'm curious to see how this thing fleshes out in terms of where police got involved 8 times to this house, and finally this time in April, this patrol officer pursues this because he hears her, reaching out from the structure, and so I don't know. It's
calling
it's
out for help, and he hears it this time.
Right,
Guys,
right, exactly. So very convoluted. The whole
jump
thing
in, Karen
is
Stark.
so.
Yeah, I just wonder, what kind of story he might have been able to come up with to explain to the hospital that he was there to pick her up. And if in fact, and it sounds like she was, that addicted, that she would just go along with the story.
Well, I know this, Karen, if this helps you at all, according to a neighbor, Jedediah Bates, he says about a year before, he would see the defendant, the rapper Viper, back his car up to the garage, force her into the car, then take the car out onto the front yard. It's very odd, Karen Stark. His front yard is very neatly kept. The home looks like it's just been painted. So you don't suspect you're holding a woman inside hostage for 5 years. So long story short, he'd get her into the car, lock the car doors, back the car across the grass to the front door, and take her into the house to get a bath, and then force her back in the car, not let her walk so she could get away, but force her back into the car and pull it back to the garage and force her in. Guys, right now we are being joined by a special guest, Shauna Burns. She is the mother of Haley Burns. Haley was lured by an online predator when she was a teen girl, and she was held captive in the predator's home for over a year. She was starved, she was sex assaulted, and this is as a teen girl. Shauna, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
When you are hearing this case unfold, a lot of people, as you know, are saying, why didn't she leave? Why didn't she get out of there? When he opened the door, why didn't she run out? It's not like that. What have you learned from your experience with your daughter being taken and held captive, beaten, sex assaulted, starved for over a year?
He controlled every thought that she had. Even after she was in the safety of the police and he was in custody, she was still very fearful that he was going to come and hurt her, that he was going to find a way out. The situation is so similar. My daughter was also starved, and because of that, it made her ability to think and to function very limited. Even when we were with her
12 to 16 to 18 hours after we recovered her, she was still not mentally all there. She was still very much under his control.
What was
And
going through your mind in that year plus that your daughter was held hostage?
A million thoughts at the same time. Is she okay? Does she need me? Is she crying out for me? Like, what if she's calling out for me? What if she needs me? What if I can't get to her? Like, that's the hardest part is being a mom, is you want to protect your kid and you want to keep your kid safe. And we knew very early on, we knew that our daughter had been lured away by an internet predator. We knew it, the FBI knew it, and we knew that the person that had her did not have good intentions. So the whole time that she was gone, it was just like, what is happening to her? What horrific things is she enduring? And why, like, how can we get to her to save her?
I want you to hear more from Michael Collins, Commander Michael Collins from the Houston PD in our Cut 8.
The concern is that we possibly had an individual located inside this residence, perhaps locked inside one of the interior rooms. You can see behind me the way the house is laid out. On the west side of the residence, there's an attached garage, and that had a deadbolt on the outside of the actual unit, so that somebody on the inside was only able to gain entry or leave if it was unlocked from the outside. So we weren't sure if anybody was inside.
Yes, a woman was inside for 5 years, starving and being raped. It's uncanny that this very odd type of kidnapping, where you keep the person like an enslaved pet and treat it, happens over and over and over, and no one seems to notice. Do I have to say the words Ariel Castro? Take a listen to our Cut 34.
When Amanda Berry called 911 on May 6, 2013, it was an answered prayer after 10 years of captivity when many people thought she was dead. But that was just the start of what Cleveland was going to find out. In 2003, Ariel Castro offered to give Amanda Berry a ride home from her job at Burger King. The 16-year-old knew Castro's children and got in his car. Castro took her back to his house, where he assaulted her and held her captive. But she wasn't the only one. A year before Amanda Berry was kidnapped, 20-year-old Michelle Knight got a ride from Castro, and she became his first prisoner. In 2004, Castro added another victim, 14-year-old Gina De Jesus. She was a close friend of his daughter, Arlene. Castro kept the women chained in his basement and tortured and raped them daily.
And more.
While keeping the girls captive, Castro lived a normal life. Family came to his house, but he blocked certain areas. He even attended a vigil for Gina De Jesus. He moved the girls into a barricaded room upstairs. Throughout their captivity, Castro restrained the women and subjected them to multiple sexual assaults. When Knight became pregnant, which happened several times, Castro starved and beat her until she miscarried. He allowed Berry's pregnancy to come to term, but forced her to give birth inside a plastic swimming pool. He kept the women captive in his house for years, where he tormented and raped them. Berry's escape on May 6, 2013, calling 911, led to Castro's arrest. On August 1st, he was sent to prison for life plus 1,000 years. Castro was found hanged in a prison cell September 3rd, 2013.
The MO so similar, modus operandi, method of operation, grabbing the 16-year-old girl off the street, luring her into his car, much the same way that this victim was lured. A lot has been kept secret in the current case, the case in chief. The judge even vacated the courtroom to read charges and allegations out loud due to the nature of the crimes. So Castro kept not one, but multiple women chained up in a home while he led a normal life, much like Lee Carter, aka Viper, the rapper. I guess a similar case that is eerily similar to this case is that of schoolgirl J.C. Dugard. Take a listen to our cut 29.
JC Lee Dugard was 11 years old when she was abducted off the street while walking to her school bus stop. Philip Garrido, a convicted sex offender, and his wife Nancy lured JC close enough to their car to grab her. Garrido shot JC with a taser, and Nancy covered her with blankets. JC Dugard was driven 170 miles away to Antioch, where she would be housed in the backyard, cut off from the entire world. The Garridos kept JC Dugard captive in her backyard prison. The Garridos start calling her Alyssa, and she is raped by Philip Garrido. JC becomes pregnant for the first time at age 14 and gives birth to a healthy baby girl. She's pregnant again at 17 and gives birth to another baby girl. In both cases, the Garridos delivered the children without any medical assistance. Soon, JC Dugard's daughters are living with her in her backyard prison.
JC Dugard kept for years along with her children. Their father was her kidnapper / rapist. And then there is another young girl that I can't forget, Abby Hernandez. Take a listen.
As Abby Hernandez walks home from school, blisters from her new boots are making it hard to walk. A stranger offers a ride, and she gets in. In seconds, the man pulls a gun, tells Abby if she screams or tries to escape, there will be consequences. He handcuffs her, breaks her cell phone, and drives to a rural wooded area. The man ties her up, sexually assaults the 14-year-old, and locks her in a soundproof shipping container. To make matters worse, he adds a shock collar around her neck to keep her from screaming. Abby Hernandez is being drugged, sexually assaulted, tortured with a dog collar, kept in a soundproof shipping container, and now her captor demands she call him master. And he claims he has rigged the storage container where he holds the teenager to erupt into flames if she attempts to escape.
I've got so many similar transactions, but before I go back to the case in chief, I would be remiss if I don't mention the case of someone I now call a friend, Alicia Kozakevich, who amazingly survived a similar kidnap. Take a listen, our cut 27.
When Alicia Kozakevich was 13, she was groomed, lured, and abducted by an internet predator named Scott Tyree. Tyree gained her trust, and as Alicia has said, Tyree lured her out of the house between dinner and dessert. Tyree took Alicia to his home in Virginia, where he kept her chained to the floor. He was live streaming what he had been doing to Alicia online. People were watching as she had her hands bound above her head, crying, beating, bleeding, begging, raping, and on it went.
Alicia was saved because another sex predator was seeing the live stream and felt so bad about it. He, a predator, called police.
Oh, Mom, that's
Karen
crazy.
Stark, renowned psychologist, joining us from Manhattan. It's another layer of torture, of rape, of kidnapping to keep the person like they're some sort of pet, like an animal that you keep against their will, assault, beat, rape, starve. What is that that's beyond a normal rapist or kidnapper?
Well, that Nancy is brainwashing. That is making the person be your slave. And if you listen to this, it's young girls their brain is just developing, and so how do they begin to have a sense of themselves and know the difference between who they are and the person who's turning them into their personal slave? So it's a tactic that actually works to further enslave the person.
To you, Dave Mack, crimeonline.com investigative reporter, where does the case against Lee Carter, aka Viper, stand right now?
Shockingly enough, Nancy, after his first court appearance, he had $100,000 bond. He made the bond and got out. There were some conditions of bail. I mean, he's got to wear an ankle bracelet and have to stay around the house. But in reality, the investigation has just started. He will be appearing back in court in the coming weeks. But this has been turned over to the human trafficking division at the Houston Police Department.
So this guy's on bond?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm also very curious about the other 3 women he bragged about keeping in different domiciles.
Why he's on bond?
If you know or think you know anything about this victim, her ordeal, or the other alleged victims, please call 713-308-1600. And if you don't know who the Viper is, just check out YouTube. He's already gotten 4 million downloads of his song, You Cowards Don't Take Crack. That's impressive. We wait as justice unfolds. Goodbye, friend. Guys, thank you for watching Crime Online with Nancy Grace here on YouTube.
That was
To
one
get the
case.
very latest, subscribe.
And the
Crime
case that comes starting tomorrow is the case that goes to trial that one Drew Matters told me about. Is this one. The murder of Yeah, we went over this yesterday, but I wanna see something. She went missing on. It says here. She went missing, and then he's been charged with murder. The dates between May 24th and May 25th laid out hourly increment. The original handwriting alibi script was uncovered from a trash bin in the Fora Grump forum where those works and photocopies were in the briefcase. The alibi scripts include a narrative which was nearly identical to the information provided by Norcris in the first interview and the representative on the account of May 24th and May 25th, 2019, which glucose and trochals together had authorized and which narrative proceeded nearly verbatim in her first interview. So basically it says they had a second interview. They discussed the details of those dates. When they're confronted with the evidence, much of which are unknown to the investigator during the first interview, then they issue an arrest warrant. Police allege that she spent the entire morning of May 24th with dual calls beginning at 6:20 when they had sex before her daughter's breakfast and drove her to school. This craze is crazy. Like, a judge allegedly admitted that maybe he wasn't home the entire morning, but accounted for his whereabouts between 6:40 and 8:15 on that day Jennifer disappeared. That is crazy. I'm gonna see what happened. I'm gonna see what happened. I'm gonna find some information on this case because this lady disappeared. We need to, if we're gonna, because I'm gonna I'm gonna live stream this case around. I should be on earlier tomorrow because tomorrow's Thursday. So let's see. So I go here, then I go here.
Phones were so different back in the day.
remember.
Well, more than 4.5 years now after a Connecticut mother vanished, the first trial in connection to the disappearance and death of Jennifer Farber-Dulos gets ready to start.
Channel 3 New Haven Bureau Chief Matt McFarland spent the day at Stamford Superior Court. He's looking ahead to what we can expect as the trial of Michelle Troconis gets underway.
They seated the final alternate juror today. That means starting tomorrow, 6 jurors, 5 alternates will begin hearing evidence. And it could be a lot because the list provided to the core of potential witness includes hundreds of names who could be called to testify.
They've listed 100, 150 witnesses. If they call half of them, it's still going to be a long time, and they're going to put on whatever they're going to put on, and we're prepared.
Thursday morning, the state will start presenting evidence in its case against Michelle Troconis. Troconis, the former girlfriend of Fotis Dulos, is charged with conspiracy to commit murder along with hindering prosecution and tampering with evidence in the disappearance and death of Jennifer Farber-Dulos. Fotis Dulos, Jennifer's estranged husband, was charged with murder, but he committed suicide in early 2020 before his case went to trial. And with the trial getting underway now, Jennifer's family and friends provided a statement saying it's important to focus on Jennifer and her 5 kids who lost their mother and eventually both parents. We do not seek closure, as nothing can bring Jennifer back. Our hope is that this trial provides for accountability and answers. As for the trial's potential witnesses, in addition to dozens of law enforcement officers listed, there's Norm Pattis, Fotis Dulos' former attorney, 2 of the Dulos children, and the former employee whose pickup truck police believe Dulos used to drive down to New Canaan and carry out the murder before taking it to a car wash. Also listed is Kent Mawhinney, a friend of Dulos and former attorney who himself is awaiting trial in this case, also charged with conspiracy to commit murder. As for whether or not Troconis could take the stand herself,
it's not something that's done lightly. It's a decision that's made by the client in consultation with her lawyer. And that's something that is not going to even be in dispute or in discussion for at least another month.
The judge says he expects the evidence portion of the trial to last about 6 weeks. And of course, we will be here when it gets underway tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Reporting outside Stamford Superior Court, Matt McFarland, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Ready to be an e-commerce pioneer? Bluehost has step-by-step WordPress onboarding to make creating and running a great online store easy as pie. Our baked-in premium plugins give you the best in
of 5, Jennifer Dulos, disappeared in May of 2019. She is now presumed dead. Her estranged husband was charged with murder. He took his own life before a verdict in his case, but his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, is facing multiple charges in connection with the case. Her trial gets underway this week. And here to talk about the charges she is facing and the trial ahead is attorney Ray Hassett. Ray is with the law firm Hassett & George, a former member of the U.S. Attorney's Office, more than 35 years experience in focusing on criminal law. Ray, thank you for being here today.
Good morning, Keith.
As this goes to trial this week, a lot of attention, obviously, on this case. Troconis charged with conspiracy to commit murder. For somebody who's watching at home, what do you make of that? What does that charge entail?
So she's actually been charged with a number of different felonies. One is hindering prosecution. The other is conspiracy to falsify or tamper with evidence. But the most serious, as you've indicated, is the conspiracy to commit murder. Now, that doesn't mean that she committed the murder. It means that she did some objective act in furtherance of the conspiracy itself. So in this case, that the state would have to prove is that she's done something to effectively assist Mr. Dulos in what they believe to be his murder of Jennifer. And so the facts aren't completely the same as the facts in a murder case, but it's a conspiracy to do something in which led to the murder or was part of the murder itself. Obviously, the big issue is going to be there is no body. So there's going to be a question that's going to be raised by the defense as to whether, in fact, there actually was a murder, how it was done, how it was performed. Those facts the state's going to have to establish beyond a reasonable doubt did occur so that the conspiracy charge will, in fact, apply to Ms. Troconis.
How strong do you think these charges are? How strong of a case do you think the state has?
So the state has a case that's based on circumstantial evidence. Most cases like this are circumstantial. Circumstantial evidence is not I saw it or I heard it or I was there. I have have a video. It's, for example, we had a snowstorm, and in the backyard in the snow, if you look out one morning and you see footprints across the snow, then you're going to see, well, wait a minute, someone was in my backyard walking. You can surmise through circumstantial evidence that something happened. It's a reasonable conclusion. In this case, the state is going to have to present all the circumstantial evidence they have. They have a multitude of inconsistent statements from Ms. Trigonis. She gave 3 different interviews, inconsistencies in each of those. She also was not clear with some of the statements that she gave, and she actually recanted some of the information that she gave. Now, the complication becomes English is not her native language. And as a result, did she understand? Did she comprehend? I think the defense will jump on that to indicate that there may have been a lack of clarity in some of the questioning, and she may have answered the questions without clearly understanding what she was saying. And of course, the circumstantial evidence is going to lead further than that.
And speaking of our defense, you know this defense team that is representing her. Tell us a little bit about them. What do you anticipate?
Sure, I've had cases with the 2 primary people that are on the defense team. They're very good, well-respected defense attorneys. They have very good reputations. I think they're very passionate about their cases. I think they'll do a wonderful job in presenting the evidence on behalf of their client, Ms. Trigonis. However, there is considerable evidence that the state police compiled, and they did an extensive review of videos from the Merritt Parkway to bus videos to try to put a timeline together. And the timeline's pretty compelling when you look at it, especially when you take into consideration some of the statements, for example, statements from Ms. Trigonis and one of the attorneys that was involved in the case as well.
So what is her best defense?
Her best defense, I think, well, first of all, remember, she doesn't have to get up and testify, so we don't know whether we'll hear from her or not. The chances are you will probably not. If I was to guess, you're not going to hear from her at trial. That's her constitutional right. I think her best defense is to say circumstantially, there's no indication that she was actually present or involved in the actual murder. And of course, we know Mr. Doulos was an overbearing person. What effect did that have on her? Was she complicit in doing or saying things at his direction, his insistence? So the question really becomes, what did she have the mental capacity, what we call the mens rea, the specific intent to participate in some of these crimes?
We talked about the intense public interest in this story. It went on to become a movie. I anticipate a lot of folks out there later this week when I am there to cover the trial. Speak to me about a timeline here. We already have seen this delayed as a result of issues with the jury. Could this go on for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a month, longer?
So Judge Kevin Randall is running the case. He's going to run it very precisely and in accordance with instructions that he's been given from the judicial branch, and that is once a jury trial of this nature starts, you finish it. And obviously there'll be weather considerations, there may be illnesses of jurors and things of that nature that can interfere, but I presume that this is going to go straight through until it's concluded. The estimate that I've heard is somewhere in March, so it's not going to be a short trial. There's a lot of testimony. There's going to be forensic testimony. There's going to be eyewitness testimony, video testimony. I will say that the state police did a very thorough investigation in this case, and it's going to be part of the defense's objective is to poke holes in that to show how it's, in fact, the conclusions that they've reached are not accurate.
How do celebrities like Justin Bieber and The Rock generate hundreds of millions of dollars? It's actually not what you think. They make a special kind of money known as royalties.
My name is Christian.
Let's turn to our next big trial. This is the missing mom conspiracy trial for Michelle Trigonis. Trial is scheduled to begin on Thursday, and we're going to bring it to you live here on Court TV.
Trigonis is charged in connection with the disappearance of Connecticut mother of 5, Jennifer Doulos. She vanished in 2019 during an ugly divorce and custody battle with her husband, Fotos Doulos.
The trial was supposed to start today, but was pushed to Thursday because of the dismissal of an alternate juror. Let's take a look back at this case against Trigonis and her connection with the missing mom's husband.
On Friday, May 24th, 2019, Jennifer Doulos dropped her 5 children off at school and returned to her New Canaan, Connecticut home, never to be seen again. Around 7 o'clock that evening, Doulos was officially reported missing by friends and family.
Startling with 5 children. That's really disturbing.
Once police arrived at her home, they followed a trail of blood from the garage to Jennifer's SUV, abandoned at a nearby park, and a massive search was on. While investigators searched, they discovered evidence pointing to a contentious divorce and custody battle between Jennifer and her luxury home-building husband, Fotos Doulos.
I am afraid of my husband, Jennifer said in court papers.
I know that filing for divorce will enrage him. I know he will retaliate by trying to harm me in some way.
The only thing I have to say again, for one more time, is that my only concern are my children. I care deeply about them, and I can't wait to be with them again.
After the discovery of surveillance video showing Fotis and his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, discarding items the evening of Jennifer's disappearance, police began zeroing in on Jennifer's estranged husband.
I hope for her family something, she gets found, or I don't think there can ever be closure, but I hope there is some resolution.
Investigators brought in Fotis and Michelle for interviews. Following the interviews, a note was found during a police search of Fotis' home detailing a timeline. That timeline matched details his girlfriend Michelle Troconis had given police in an interview recalling the day of Jennifer's disappearance.
I hold a paper towel, but I didn't smell it. I didn't see that.
Police interviewed Troconis a total of 3 times, getting conflicting information in each interview.
He gave me a piece of paper or a toilet paper towel, and I put it inside where I had the bag of cleaning what I was cleaning the house.
Although police have not recovered the body of Jennifer Dulos, on June 1st, less than 2 weeks after her disappearance, Dulos was arrested.
As you know, Mr. Dulos was arrested today and charged with 3 counts: murder, felony murder, and kidnapping. Michelle Troconis was arrested.
3 weeks after Fotis Dulos was charged in the murder of his ex-wife, Jennifer, he died by suicide.
They could see through a window that Mr. Dulos was sitting in his vehicle, and he had obvious signs of medical distress.
Now, Michelle Troconis faces trial for conspiracy to commit the murder of her boyfriend's estranged wife, Jennifer Dulos. She's pled not guilty of the charges and claims she was unaware of what Fotis was doing the day Jennifer disappeared. Now, the victim's family hopes that this trial could shed new light on locating Jennifer's body.
I'm always looking for new ways to expand people's perspective of the world.
Let me pause that for a second. Let me end the poll, because obviously there's only not that many of us. 5 people voted. Everybody voted. Some people, we got 80% yes, 0% no, and 20% hell freaking yes.
And Ted, this is such a big case. I'm going to be traveling to Connecticut to cover it. Everyone in Connecticut has been focused on this. Her body has never been found. And so there are a lot of questions. Hopefully, maybe people can get some closure in this case or some sort of resolution. We will see. But meanwhile, let's bring in from New York, trial attorney and civil rights attorney Richard St. Paul. Richard, some of the things that have been talked about in this case is this language barrier by the defendant. And when she was questioned, she was given some information, then she was responding, and she gave some conflicting reports of what took place. But maybe that language barrier is a problem. Defense attorneys can use that. What are you seeing so far as this case just is going to start to get underway on Thursday?
Always like, and the prosecution would always like to have the body, right? Because the body also tells part of the story. So that's kind of going to be an uphill battle for the prosecution is, well, there's no body. And if there's no body, there's no forensic evidence, there's no DNA, there's nothing there that helps connect Troconis to the murder. So this is going to be a very circumstantial case. Now, the defense has already been able to knock out the phone information because the police searched Troconis' phone without a warrant. So that's obviously a win for the defense and a loss for the prosecution. So whatever was on the phone. But this is definitely an uphill battle, and it's going to require a lot of circumstantial evidence. I'm sure the family of Mrs. Dulos sees this as the only opportunity for justice for their daughter. But again, there's still a lot of pieces to connect to show that there was an active, overt act by Troconis to murder Mrs. Doulos.
And clearly, Folos Doulos was the person behind this. According to the state, he's dead. Now, this is the only chance for justice, if you will, for this family. The other part of the equation is that body. And I'm sure that family would love to know what really happened. And if she does know, one would think at this point a deal might have been offered to her in exchange for information, something, because this is one of those cases where, to your point, Richard, it's not a slam dunk for the state. And for the family, you're going to really want as much information as you can. And if she knows something, one would think that would be a pretty good, but here we are. Obviously, no deal's been made.
Right. So no deal's been made here, and whether or not there has been an offer on the table, we don't. That's to be determined. But again, if you are truly innocent, then you're likely not going to want to make a deal, because any deal here will require her to spend time in jail for a lengthy period of time. And so if you working with your defense team believe that you have a strong case that you can present, and you're innocent, you're going to take that shot out there. And again, as I said before, this is a lot of circumstantial evidence. And also just the police interview, the language barrier, that's something that is going to be mitigating factors to the jury, saying, hey, she didn't really understand what was saying. She wasn't really sure. She didn't know her rights. And certainly she was nervous. All that's going to play as part of the defense as to why they were conflicting the stories. The defense is always going to want to explain away things that the prosecution says that the prosecution wants to hang their hat on.
Do you think we could see her take the stand in this case, and she could easily pin it on her ex-boyfriend? We could obviously see that happening.
Certainly. The times that the defendant, I should say, takes the stand, and the defense wants the defendant to take the stand, is typically when there is a story that only the defendant can tell. And here, it is likely that only the defendant can tell the story. For example, I didn't know that he was dumping things into the trash bag, which could have been, we don't know what it was, could have been different evidence, could have been body parts, could have been DNA, things like that. But she had no idea what that was when he was dumping that stuff into the trash can. That's certainly something only she can say, that she didn't know anything about this, that she had no idea what he was doing, and that she wasn't involved. So I think that's certainly something that the jury's going to want to hear as her side of the story. And of course, there's a double-edged sword because the prosecution has the ability to then cross-examine. And if she's not very well prepared for this, the prosecution may trip her up and it may hurt her.
Yeah, and that'll be last-minute decision, obviously, from the defense whether to throw her on the stand. Because, let's face it, it's a difficult case, and if you are making inroads on cross-examination, it's not worth the risk to throw her up there if you think that you've been able to establish. There's not a ton of evidence, and you know this case better than I do, Kelly, but this seems like one where there's an opening for the defendant.
Well, and it's supposedly they did, if she was to take the stand, supposedly they did make multiple stops on that day when they were throwing away trash, or even if she just threw one thing away. There were multiple stops made. That's according to some reports. Of course, that information is going to come out at trial. The prosecutors are going to flesh that out. But if she did take the stand, you would ask her, okay, so why did you make multiple stops at these various
you're not asking questions.
trash
What am I doing?
cans across the city? I mean, that doesn't make sense. That's a little bit odd.
Yeah, and avoiding her answering that question is probably good for the defense. Correct, Richard?
One thing I think is the way you could kind of explain that away is Mr. Doulos was involved in construction. And so he said that, listen, it's a pain to get rid of this stuff. I'm involved in construction. I got to get permits and stuff. So it's easy if I just take this stuff and throw it into the garbage rather than getting permits or paying to have this this construction material hauled away. So that could be explained away.
Right, and yeah, you're right. And then she can say that that's what he told me. It was just construction material. Fascinating case. Kelly's going to be there, and we'll all be watching.
That is interesting. What do you guys think? Do you think Do you think she's guilty?
For too long, my family has waited
Not
on
guilty.
medical appointments. But now that One Medical's 24/7 virtual care is available.
Back to Court TV Live, I'm Julie Grant. Turning now to the upcoming retrial in the pizza delivery murder case.
Well,
This is
there's another
involving
case I was
defendant
trying to follow.
Erica Stefanko. You'll remember we broadcasted her trial back in 2020, and she was convicted of luring her then husband's ex-wife to a specific location for her to be murdered. And that conviction was then overturned by the Ohio Court of Appeals. So the victim here was pizza delivery driver Ashley Biggs. This is her. And she was involved in a bitter custody battle with Chad Cobb, who was married to Erica Stefanko at the time. He was first with Ashley Biggs and then had moved on to Erica Stefanko. And the facts go like this. Stefanko and Cobb conspired together. She made a fake pizza order, and Ashley Biggs was attacked and killed while she was doing her job, thinking she was making that pizza delivery, but was set up to be killed by Chad Cobb. And in 2022, defendant Erica Stefanko won her appeal, and the case was sent back down to the trial court level for a retrial. Here's some information on the background of the case.
The jury has found the defendant, Erica Stefanko, guilty of the offense of aggravated murder.
An Ohio jury convicted Erica Stefanko in 2020 for her role in the violent murder of 25-year-old mother Ashley Biggs. It was the verdict that Biggs's friends had waited for more than 8 years.
Wow,
Ashley can finally rest. We can finally continue to tell the true story about her and be able to say both of her murderers are in jail.
But their relief would not last. 2 years later, Stefanko's conviction was overturned, setting the stage for a murder retrial. Stefanko stood trial in fall of 2020 as the COVID-19 pandemic raged. Presiding Judge Amy Corrigal-Jones let the trial proceed over the objections of both the prosecutors and the defense.
Everyone will remain with a mask on, and we will proceed accordingly.
It was the remote testimony of a key witness from prison that an appellate court found fault with, and that court reversed Stefanko's conviction. The witness? Chad Cobb, Stefanko's ex-husband, who admitted to killing Biggs and is serving a life sentence for murder.
Is it fair to say that Ashley did not leave that parking lot alive that night?
Yes, sir, that is accurate.
Prosecutors allege that Cobb killed Biggs to end a bitter custody dispute over their daughter and that he did it with the help of his then wife, Erica.
She drove Chad to the crime scene. She knew why it was going to happen. It was that custody battle. It was retaliation. She made the call to Domino's that lured Ashley Biggs to her death.
Biggs worked as a pizza delivery driver. The night of June 21st of 2012, prosecutors say Stefanko called in a bogus pizza order using a fake name to lure Biggs to an isolated location where Cobb ambushed her.
A zip tie was placed around her neck, causing strangulation to her death. She was beat. Her body was thrown in the back of her car, driven to a different county.
Cobb pleaded guilty to Biggs's murder in 2013. But years later, Cobb decided to implicate Stefanko, who had since divorced him and married his best friend. During the trial, Cobb pointed the finger at Stefanko, while Stefanko's lawyer argued that Cobb was testifying against his ex out of spite.
Here's a person who's admitted his guilt, admitted that he beat, admitted that he strangled Ashley Biggs, killed her, and yet now he's trying to get out of it. How credible is that kind of person?
A new trial means a new chance at freedom for Stefanko if she can convince a jury she had nothing to do with Biggs's murder.
They can't use them.
That could mean Stefanko takes the witness stand in her own defense, something she declined to do in her first trial. Stefanko faces life in prison if she is convicted of murder.
Let me show you how we do stuff around here. Actually, my department uses Monday.com, so I'm good. The work manager.
All right, that was anchor Ashley Wilcott reporting there for us. Now, a big part of Erica Stefanko's appeal was that the trial judge erred in allowing Chad Cobb to testify remotely. Now, of course, this was because of the pandemic, and we expect Cobb to testify again at trial, but this time in person. You'll recall we talked a lot about this in our analysis on Court TV about the confrontation clause in our Constitution and the right to confront witnesses against you. And this is what the appellate court found, that she had a right to have him there right in front of her in the same room. So that's what we're going to see as this case opens up this week. As we're gearing up, let's remind ourselves a little bit of what Chad Cobb told the jury. He was an interesting character, and he recalls how Stefanko lured Ashley Biggs to her death.
Oh, it's already started.
Right. So when she walked over to the Lincoln,
interesting.
What did she do?
She made a phone call.
And could you hear that phone call?
I could hear bits and pieces, but not the entire thing.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Mr. Cobb, on this occasion, you're going to be allowed to answer this following question. What did you hear Erica say on that phone call? Objection.
Overruled.
I remember her saying somebody else's name. I remember it was a Jennifer or Katie, and it was Mick something. Like how you say McDonald's. I don't remember what she said the last name was. And I remember she ordered a pizza. And I remember it struck me as bizarre because she ordered a half pepperoni and mushroom pizza.
And when she ordered the pizza,
smiling.
I'm sorry?
She was smiling.
Objection, non-responsive. Motion is strike.
Sustained. It's stricken.
Where was she when she made the phone call?
Over by the Lincoln.
Do you know what phone she was using?
I don't.
Was it a phone you gave her?
Oh, we had a bunch of phones at the house. I don't know which one she was using.
Did you give her a phone on that occasion?
No, sir. We had a bunch of phones. We had a number of cell phones at the house for the employees. I don't know which one she took.
My only question to you is, did you hand her a phone that evening?
No, sir.
After she made the phone call, what did you do?
I was still over by the tree.
Were the kids all still in the car when she made the phone call?
Yes, sir.
As far as you know, did the kids ever leave the car?
No, sir.
What's the next thing you did?
I stayed at the tree and Erica walked back over.
Did you have another conversation?
Yes, sir.
After that conversation was done, what did you do next?
I was still at the tree. And Eric, I was still at the tree and Erica went in the vehicle and left.
And when she left, you were there without a vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And what happened next?
A short time later, Ashley showed up.
The trial actually started today. If y'all want to watch opening statements, up to y'all.
You are a strong CFO.
I am a strong CFO.
You're in control of your travel expenses.
Well, kind of. Not. Is it fair to say that Ashley did not leave that parking lot alive that night?
Yes, sir, that is accurate.
Yeah, we could watch it tomorrow then.
What were you wearing when Ashley showed up?
Well, if we don't get to this case, we could watch it after the second case finishes.
Sorry, sir, your image froze. I heard what were you wearing, but then nothing. You didn't say anything else. It froze.
What were you wearing when Ashley showed up?
I was still in my work clothes, cable shirt, camouflage pants and jacket, work boots.
And did you have duct tape on your coat?
I did.
And it was a camouflage coat that matched the pants?
One more time, please.
Did the camouflage pants match the camouflage coat?
Yes, sir.
And you had camouflage belt on?
I don't remember what kind of belt I had on, but I usually wore a belt, yes, sir.
And what did you have with you?
I might have had my wallet. I know I had my work taser on me, and I know I had my diving knife on me.
No, weekends I'll be streaming early. Very early.
At some point in time, did you make a phone call?
Yes, sir.
And who did you call?
I called my wife.
Erica?
Yes, sir.
And when you called her, then what happened?
She showed up.
Erica showed up. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What did you do with Ashley's body?
When I had to leave, I picked her up and put her in the car.
Whose car?
Ashley's car.
What part of the car did you put her in?
In the back seat.
And when you put her in the back seat, did she have anything on her that was placed on her that she didn't have on her when she arrived?
Yes, there was.
What was on her?
I'll be consistent.
A zip tie.
Every day.
How many?
I only remember one. I remember one around her neck.
So how did you lift her into the car?
How did I, what, to the car, sir?
How did you lift her into the car?
I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer that.
That's okay. Let me ask another question. How tall was Ashley?
She's a little shorter than me, so 5'8", 5'7"
How tall are you?
6'2".
And is she how is she built? Big, small, medium?
She's hefty and strong.
So was it difficult for you to get her into the car?
Yes, sir.
So did you use the zip ties to lift her?
No, sir.
When we come back, we'll hear more from Chad Cobb as he talks more about how Ashley Biggs died and who was the one who killed her.
Connecticut mother goes missing. Now, her estranged husband's girlfriend
stands trial for her alleged role in the disappearance.
The Missing Mom Conspiracy Trial. Live coverage begins this week only on Court TV.
Ms. Stefanko, based upon the facts and circumstances, consideration of the relevant sentencing factors, applying the minimum sanction I've determined will protect the public and punish you without imposing an unnecessary burden on state or local resources. Analyzing all the factors I'm required to analyze, including the seriousness factors, the recidivism factors, and all other factors before the court. The court is issuing a life sentence with parole eligibility after 30 years. As part of your sentence, you must obey all laws, refrain from any offensive conduct, follow all the rules of the department. You're not allowed.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julie Grant. We're talking about the pizza delivery murder trial. Why? Because the conviction for Erica Stefanko has been overturned. You'll recall she was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole back in 2020 after being convicted of luring her then husband's ex-wife, Ashley Biggs, to a remote location where Biggs would be ambushed by her ex-husband, Chad Cobb, and killed. Now, Stefanko's conviction has been overturned by the Ohio Court of Appeals. The court found that the trial court made an error in allowing Stefanko's ex-husband, murderer Chad Cobb, to testify against her remotely. Now, remember, this was all during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? That was why the remote testimony was allowed. But the Court of Appeals has spoken, so now Erica Stefanko has to be retried. Now, Chad Cobb did plead guilty to murdering his ex-wife, Ashley Biggs. She's also the mother of his then 6-year-old daughter at the time. He pleaded in order to avoid the death penalty. So he's currently serving a life sentence. And he gave testimony against Erica Stefanko, his current wife at the time. He's going to have to give that testimony all over again. And he claimed in his testimony that he wasn't the person who actually strangled Ashley Biggs. That's interesting. Let's listen.
Was Ashley already dead?
Oh boy, Ashley died.
Yes, sir.
Did you strangle her?
I'm not the one who strangled her, sir.
Would you please repeat that?
I am not the one that strangled her, sir.
I see. So now you pled guilty, and now you're saying that you didn't kill her. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, did you and Erica ever plan to kill Ashley Biggs?
No, sir.
At your sentencing, when Judge Jones asked you if you had anything to say,
he's always late.
Did you say anything about Erica?
I'm gonna end once this video is over.
At sentencing,
You're done in like 7 minutes.
I told the judge that there's
It's
a
about
lot
3 to
that
4
I need
minutes.
to say about this, but there's very little that I can.
Mr. Cobb,
Yes, sir.
I'm asking you specifically. At sentencing, did you ever mention during your sentencing allocution anything about Erica Lyon?
Again, I said that there's a lot of things that need to be said, but there's so little that I can at that time.
Judge, can you instruct the witness to answer directly?
Well, Attorney O'Brien, I think he's answering your question. If you want to ask him directly, did he reference her name? You can do that. We'll see what his answer is.
Right. Did you mention Erica's name at sentencing?
No, sir.
This guy made me so mad. How about you? I found him infuriating, sitting there in that Mr. Rogers sweater trying to look all innocent. He's lucky he didn't get the death penalty. He killed the mother of his child. That's what he did. And when he tries to backtrack and say he didn't have a role in it, it's disgusting. I also hate that this case was overturned. I don't agree with it. I feel like, what was the judge supposed to have done during the pandemic when we were all supposed to be safe and distance ourselves? This was brand new territory to navigate legally. And our court system, some of them were open and we're operating with masks and glass and Zooms, all of those things. So now Ashley Biggs, her justice is again up in the air. You know, this is a woman who deserves justice for her murder. Her daughter deserves justice. And now Erica Stefanko, one of her killers, gets a second bite at the apple. There's Ashley Biggs, a reminder she's who this case is about. She's the pizza delivery driver who deserved to live. And her mother, who was known throughout the proceedings as GC to protect her identity, her child, rather known as GC, sadly had to give testimony in this case. How sad is that she had to testify against stepmom, Erica Stefanko? I want to bring in my guest and I want to play some of what she told the court. I have with me family and parenting relationship expert Dr. Sue Kornbluth and retired police sergeant Melissa Pinkleton. I've got this clip where the daughter, GC, the daughter that Ashley Biggs and Chad Cobb had together, and she gives testimony about Erica Stefanko's stepmom being abusive, and says the abuse went so far as she even gave GC dog feces to eat. That's what the child told the court. Let's listen.
And you said physically, so what was the physical type of abuse?
I remember she would hold me on the ground and she would hit me. And then she also, before, made me eat dog feces.
So let's talk about that. Do you know why she made you eat dog feces?
Because she was jealous of my relationship with my father.
With who?
With my father.
With your father.
Dr. Sue, your thoughts, please.
She's guilty. What else is there to say here, Julie? I mean, this whole case is making me sick, as it is you. Who else got a new trial? The problem here during COVID, not many people. Here's the problem here. This woman is abusive. They're covering it up. He's helping, and that's what's going on here.
Dr. Sue Kornbluth, we always love having you on Court TV Live. Thank you so much. We've got to say goodbye to you.
This mistake is cost.
That was the last thing. Please like and subscribe. And I'm going to give a countdown to end the stream. And then I'll be ending it.